Chapter 33:23. However, Little Bao ignored him. Instead, he turned around and glanced at the Sacred Heaven Alliance disciple at the side. This pill was refined by my mother. Her medical skills are even stronger than her pill refining abilities. Now, do you think my mother has the qualifications to remove this bounty list and treat your alliance master? The audience fell into a deathly silence. After a long while, the Sacred Heaven Alliance disciple who wanted to chase Xiaobao away suddenly came back to his senses and said with a trembling voice, "May I ask young master's mother's name and where she is now? The Sacred Heaven Alliance is willing to welcome you personally to show our respect." On the stairs, Wen Jian's complacent smile froze on his face. Gradually, it turned into a vicious, cold, and vicious expression. At the foot of Mount Spirit Wonder, in front of a simple stone house. With a loud bang, the earthen kiln used for refining swelled up high, and then suddenly exploded. Scalding rubble and dirt flew everywhere. When it splashed onto his body, it was a terrifying blister. Ruan Yanan didn't care about her injuries at all. She quickly rushed over and pulled out a long sword from the rubble. However, the moment she saw the sword, she was so depressed that she wanted to cry. "Sorry." Seeing Mayan and Di Mingju coming out of the room, Ruan Yanan deeply buries her head, her voice almost crying, I'm too useless. Miss June, you gave my mother precious elixirs, but I can't even refine a sword." Mu Yen took the long sword. She didn't even need to probe it with her divine sense to know that it was a Tier 1 divine tool. Both its attributes and purity were quite good. It could be sold for a good price in the outside world. But the requirements for her life-bond sword were worlds apart. In fact, Mu Yen never thought that Ruan Yanan could refine a natal sword for her. She just vaguely felt that there was an inexplicable and peculiar aura on the magic treasure that Ruan Yanan refined. She had sensed this kind of aura from the Bixia sword, from the Chaotic Tower, and even from the Tian Mo Qin. However, compared to the vast and majestic breath of the Tian Mo Qin, the evil warding spell and the Chaotic Tower were endless. Ruan Yanan's magic treasure was so weak that it was almost undetectable. Mu Yen remembers the Shin musician refining skill that she can't activate, so she wants to witness the process of Ruan Yanan refining a magic weapon with her own eyes. But to her disappointment, in the end, the Shin musician's refining skills were not stimulated. Looking at the young lady, she was so upset that she almost cried. Mu Yen reached out and rubbed her head, softly saying, "It's all right, your magic weapon was refined very well, it was my request that was too harsh. Even in the Sacred Heaven Alliance, I'm afraid not many people can successfully refine the flying sword that I want to refine." Feeling the gentle caress on his head, listening to the heavenly whisper, smelling the natural fragrance of the girl's body. Ruan Yanan's face was so red that it could drip water. She murmured in a low voice, But your pill cured my mother's illness, but I can't help you with anything. I'm really sorry. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. No matter what, I will definitely repay your kindness." Hearing this, Mu Yan's heart stirred. Why would a magic treasure refined by Ruan Yanan have such a weak and unique aura? She still hasn't studied this point clearly. She pondered for a moment, then said in a low voice, "I really have some interest in the magic treasure you refined. I am the city lord of Xiaoyao City. If you are willing, why don't you come back with me to Xiaoyao City? I promise that I will definitely provide you with enough refining materials to help you grow. I will also look after your mother's illness." Chapter 33:24. I do. Ruan Yanan's excited voice is floating. Grabbing Mayan's hand, she says loudly, "Miss June, no. City Lord, please take me away, I'm willing to follow you for a lifetime." As soon as Di Mingju arrives, he sees this scene, and his face immediately darkens. Towards his fiancée, no matter where she went, she would attract a bunch of lascivious men to surround her. Jun Shangdern expresses that the sea of jealousy in his heart is about to drown the 3 realms and the 6 paths. Damn it, it's not enough to guard against men, but also against women. Di Mingju makes a grabbing motion in the air, pulling Mayan, who is currently comforting Ruan Yanan, to his side. "Yanyan, can't you be a little more obedient? Don't you want to spread your charm everywhere? Mayan blinks, looking at the unfriendly man, her face full of doubt. How was she restless? Just as he was about to speak, a familiar voice came from afar. Mother. Then, the little figure jumped into her arms, hugged her neck, and rubbed against her affectionately. Mother, Xiaobao misses you so much. Her little face was cold, but she spoke in a crisp and cute voice. Her soft cheeks were rubbing against his face. Mu Yan feels like her whole heart is about to melt. Although they hadn't seen each other for only half a day, seeing the baby in her arms, she couldn't help but reveal a bright smile. She kissed his face and said, Nyangqin also missed Xiaobao. Xiaobao's face is rosy from concocting pills. He then turns his head to look at Di Mingju. He reaches out and throws himself into his arms, rubbing against him. He says in a low voice, Xiaobao also misses Daddy. Di Mingju strokes his head, his expression indifferent as he looks at the people behind Xiaobao. The disciple from the Sacred Heaven Alliance who came with little Bao was called Heng. Along the way, he had thought about this child's mother countless times. She was a reclusive famous doctor who had a son in her old age. However, when she saw the handsome man and beautiful woman standing side by side under the sun, she suddenly lost her breath. Of these two people, the man was unrivaled handsome in the world, and the woman was devastatingly beautiful. Even though he was just standing there, he was already an existence that people couldn't take their eyes off of. Now that they were standing side by side, it was a huge sensory impact. Heng had even forgotten what his name was and what he was here for. It wasn't until Situ Tinji let out a heart-wrenching cough that Zhang Heng snapped out of his daze. His trembling eyes meet Mu Yan's face, and he moves them away in a panic. May I ask if you're the doctor that the little Gongzi mentioned who opened the bounty list? Opened the bounty list? Mu Yan is confused. Xiaobao grabs Mu Yan's hand, makes her squat down, and whispers something in her ear. The Alliance Master of the Sacred Heaven Alliance, the strongest artificer of the floating island, needed to be treated? Mu Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. She held Xiaobao's face and kissed him heavily on the forehead. Xiaobao, you really are Nyangqin's lucky one. Xiaobao's cheeks were rosy, and the corners of her pink lips were curled up. She was indescribably adorable. Only then did Mu Yan look at Heng. Yes, I'm willing to try and treat Chief Xiang. I don't know. I don't know which family Madam's master is, Madam? Mu Yan looks at Di Mingju. Is this the first time someone calls her Madam? Curling the corners of her lips, Mu Yan says, a small mountain sect, not worth mentioning. May I know what illness Chief Xiang is suffering from? Heng respectfully says, for the specific situation, please come to the graceful pavilion, Madam. In fact, although the Sacred Heaven Alliance has invited so many doctors, not everyone is qualified to treat Xiang Yunzhou. Chapter 33-25. The so-called medical exchange meeting in the Pure Grace Pavilion was actually an examination of each doctor. In the end, the Sacred Heaven Alliance would even set up a test to choose the doctor who could treat Xiang Yunzhou. Mu Yan thought about it and was about to agree, when suddenly, a shrill scream came from not far away. Patriarch! Patriarch! Don't scare us! Shu Jian and Shu Mo stumbled up from behind. Little Gongzi, do you still have more medicine? Can you give one to our patriarch? Miss, are you really a doctor? I beg you, please save our family head. Mu Yan was startled, somewhat confused about the current situation. Who were the ones who were talking and sick? Weren't they from the Sacred Heaven Alliance? Mississippi at this moment, Ying Mei suddenly knelt on one knee and said hoarsely, Ying Mei wants to ask you to treat someone. Ruan Yanan temporarily prepared a room as Mu Yan's consultation room. Zhang Heng sent the other disciples of the Sacred Heaven Alliance away to report, but he stayed. In fact, although Xiaobao used an elixir to wake Situ Tinji up, most people in the Sacred Heaven Alliance were still skeptical about Mu Yan's medical skills. This time, he stayed to see if Mu Yan had a way to cure Situ Tinji. No, it was impossible to cure Situ Tinji. Zhang Heng also had a rough medical skill. On the way here, he also checked Situ Tinji's pulse. He found that this young patriarch of the Situ family was already terminally ill, and no medicine could cure him. No matter what the cause of his previous illness was, Now, he would not live for more than 3 days. But even if she couldn't cure him, he could see from Miss June's treatment method whether her medical skills were as brilliant as her son said. Beside the bed, Mu Yen clasped Sidutinji's wrist and slowly released her divine sense. After a moment, she opened her eyes and frowned slightly. Dr. June, how is our patriarch? Can he still be saved? Mu Yen raised her head and met Ing Mei's worried gaze. Her lips curled up, revealing a shallow smile. Of course, he can be saved. But I'm very curious. His dantian and meridians were originally weaker than ordinary people. Coupled with excessive cultivation, the fire poison entered his body and weakened his body. How did the previous quack treat him? Not only did they not find a way to heal his meridians, they even used an addictive paralysis drug to make him feel no pain. This anesthetic could make people feel as if there was no pain in their body. But in fact, the damage of the dantian and meridians was getting more and more serious. The vitality of the human body would be nibbled away bit by bit. A person's vitality would also be nibbled away bit by bit. Once the medicine was cut off, the pain in the meridians and dantian would increase by hundreds and thousands of times, making it unbearable. Hearing Mu Yan's words, even though Xu Jian and Xu Mo were already mentally prepared, they were still shocked and furious. Wenjin, this Wenjin has such a vicious heart. Our Situ clan has no enmity with him. In order to cure his illness, we even gave him our crystal stone mine. Why does he want to harm our clan leader? On the contrary, Sidutinji, who was lying on the bed, had an indifferent expression. He sneered, I know why he is like this. But Sidutinji did not reply. Instead, he said in a low voice, Tinji knows that my illness is beyond cure and that I will not live for long. But to be able to see you before I die, I have no regrets in this life. Chapter 33-26. Ing Mei's hands suddenly clench. Sidutinji doesn't look at her, but looks at Mu Yen instead. Dr. June, thank you for your comfort and answer, but I know my condition. It's already thanks to Dr. June's miraculous medicine that I'm clear-headed at this moment. Cough, cough. The rest is just life and death, there's no need to force it. Master, who? Master, if you leave, what will happen to the Situ family? Xu Jian and Xu Mo are sobbing, their eyes already filled with despair. Mu Yen hasn't spoken yet, but Xiaobao says unhappily with a straight face, my Nyangqin said that she can be saved, so why are you crying? Xu Jian and Xu Mo's cries stop. Sidutinji also looks over in astonishment. He sees that not only is there no doubt or guilt on that jade-carved baby's face, even Ing Mei looks calm. Even Ing Mei's expression was calm. There was nervousness and excitement in her eyes, but there was no fear or despair. Sidutinji's breathing suddenly becomes disorderly. Could it be that this beautiful young girl is really a genius doctor who can cure him? Could it be that he can really live? Mu Yen takes out the Tian Mo Qin, and her slender jade-like fingertips gently pluck the strings. Beautiful music fills the ears, accompanied by vigorous energy that overflows from the Qin, and threads of it invade Sidutinji's body. The following treatment process will be a bit painful. Master Situ, you have to endure it. Music doctor. It's actually a rare music doctor on the floating island. This thought flashes through Sidutinji's mind, and all his consciousness is immediately swallowed up by the piercing pain. Heng is also very shocked. He really didn't expect that the girl in front of him, who looks to be in her early 20s, would actually be a music doctor. A music doctor doesn't just have superb medical skills. It also needs a strong cultivation and vigorous spiritual power to supplement it. However, how could Heng know that the truly shocking scene has yet to come? The sound of the qin comes to an abrupt end. The art of Qi Huang has already been launched. Mu Yan's hands are folded together and then slowly separate. Almost transparent threads and needles appear at her fingertips. The blade cuts through Sidutinji's body, exposing his internal organs. The edge of the blade is level, and not a single drop of blood flows. Sidutinji's forehead was dripping with beads of sweat. Xu Jian and Xu Mo were both shocked and horrified. This was disemboweling. How was this woman trying to save their patriarch? She was clearly trying to kill their patriarch. The two of them were about to rush forward recklessly. Mei unsheathed her sword halfway and coldly blocked in front of them. A powerful pressure spread out, causing the two of them to feel as if their strength had been sucked out. They were unable to move at all. Shu Jian and Shu Mo were about to go crazy from anxiety. "Let go of me. What are you going to do to the patriarch?" Mei looked at the two of them coldly and immediately sealed their mouths. Time passed slowly. The expressions on the faces of everyone in the room ranged from anger, anxiety, shock, and finally admiration. This series of emotional changes lasted for more than 2 hours. However, no one felt that time was passing slowly. They only hated the fact that they did not have a photographic talisman or a mirage light stone on hand to record the dreamlike healing scene in front of them. Was there really such a miraculous medical skill in this world? A person who was obviously terminally ill, could he really be saved? Situ Tinji, whose wounds were all stitched up and spiritual power began to circulate within his body, gave them the answer. Chapter 33:27. Master, your cultivation base has returned. Master, you've really recovered. Boo-hoo. Shu Jian and Shu Mo hugged Situ Tinji, crying and laughing. Then they knelt before Mu Yen and kowtowed heavily. "Dr. Jun, my Situ family will never forget your life-saving grace." The one who knelt after Shu Jian and Shu Mo was not Situ Tinji, who staggered to get up. It was Hang. At this time, his face was flushed with excitement. The light in his eyes was excited and expectant. He stared straight at Mu Yen and said eagerly, "Dr. Jun, please come with me to the Sacred Heaven Alliance to treat our leader." Mu Yen was also afraid that a long delay would bring trouble. She planned to finish refining her natal sword as soon as possible and return to Carefree City. So she nodded. But when Mei was about to follow, she glanced at Situ Tinji and chuckled, "Mei, you stay here. But I have to protect Miss and the little master." However, when she saw Di Mingju holding Mu Yen, she immediately silenced her words. With Jun Shang here, who in this world could hurt the master? She was really confused. After Mu Yen and the others left, Situ Tinji sent Shu Jian and Shu Mo away. Only Mei and Situ Tinji were left in the room. The two quietly looked at each other. After a long time, Situ Tinji's eyes reddened first and he softly called out a name, "Little Ing." His voice was hoarse and trembling, as if what was before him was a dream. As if the dream would be shattered if he was a little rude. "Little Ing, is it really you? Are you really still alive?" Mei's whole body trembled, and her feet unconsciously walked toward Situ Tinji step by step. Finally, she staggered and knelt in front of him. Big brother, is it really you? Are you really still alive?" Both of them asked the same question. After asking, there was a sad and loving silence. After a long time, Mei's tears couldn't stop sliding down her eyes. Situ Tinji also seemed to be unable to bear it any longer. He hugged her and burst into tears. "At that time, I secretly returned to the Sher family, but our home was already a piece of scorched earth, and no one survived. I thought little Ing, you and father and mother had already." Mei tightly hugged the lost and recovered relatives, crying silently and trembling. Wasn't she the same? She thought that her father, mother, and brother had all died in that sea of fire, but it turned out that her brother was still alive. Still alive. She was not alone. Situ Tinji calmed down, then grabbed her hand and anxiously said, "Ing, how did you escape that year? Where have you been all these years? Also, did you have anything to do with the destruction of the Heavenly Palace?" Mei nodded. Recalling the scenes from back then, tears welled up in her eyes. "Back then, father, mother, and I were trapped in the sea of fire. It was father who sacrificed his 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls and activated the restrictive formation to send me out of the Sher clan. When I woke up, I was already in the Xiuxin continent. It was Lord who saved me, gave me a place to settle down, taught me cultivation, and let me take charge of the Xian department. When it comes to Di Mingju, Mei's eyes are filled with gratitude and reverence." At first, Situ Tinji didn't understand who this Jun Shang she was talking about was. When he understood what was going on, he was so shocked that he almost fell off his chair. Mei hurriedly supported him. You're saying that the handsome and noble young master, that Dr. Jun's husband, is the only immortal emperor in the Xiuxian continent? The supreme king of the polar domain. Sidu Tinji simply didn't know whether he should be glad that his little sister was still alive, or shocked that his family was unexpectedly saved by such a great character. Chapter 33-28. Mei smiles and is about to speak. Suddenly, little shadow, you've gone too far, actually abandoning me and Jun Shang to come to Mount Lingmiao. Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Han Ye's loud voice rushes into the room, accompanied by the banging sound of the door being knocked open. However, when he sees the scene inside the room, Han Ye's voice comes to an abrupt halt, his eyes widening little by little as he glares at the two people hugging each other. Mei suddenly comes back to her senses, promptly wiping away her tears and standing up. Han Yi, why are you? Before she could finish speaking, Han Yi has already bellowed, rushing over regardless. Bastard, you dare to take advantage of little shadow, Laozi will kill you. Han Yi, stop. Bang. Having just undergone treatment, Sidu Tinji's body is still abnormally weak. Without any power to resist, he is sent flying out, heavily crashing into his master. Blood overflows from the corners of his mouth. Mei only feels a buzzing sound in her head, almost unable to think. Han Yi has already rushed forward once again. Jealousy and anger make his eyes redden. His originally not-so-stupid brain seems to have lost the ability to think at this moment. He just wants to dismember this man who hugs Mei into 1,000 pieces. However, his second punch doesn't fall on Sidu Tinji's body. Instead, it's met with a whistling and swift sword chi. Han Yi is caught off guard, and the sword chi hits him head-on. Although this sword chi doesn't have any lethality, it only wants to stop his movements and force him back. But at this very moment, Han Yi is already unable to think. His eyes are crimson as he glares at Mei. Gritting his teeth, he hisses, Mei, you're going to attack me for another man? Mei withdraws her sword, a trace of panic in her eyes. But she has always been cold, and she doesn't like to explain no matter what she does. So after opening and closing her mouth for a long time, she only spits out a few words. No, another man? Not another man? So to say, this man is very important to her? More important than himself? So in order to protect him, she's willing to attack him. Han Yi only feels that his heart is tightly clutched, making him almost unable to breathe. Mei sees his suddenly deathly pale complexion, and her mind is thrown into chaos. She promptly says, Han Yi, he's my... So, is this why you've been avoiding me and distancing yourself from me all this time? Han Yi unexpectedly lowly laughs, but his smile is even more heart-wrenching than if he were to cry. I understand now. Everything was just my wishful thinking. You should have told me earlier. That way, I wouldn't have sunk deeper and deeper, to the point where I'm unable to extricate myself and doomed eternally. Han Yi abruptly closes his eyes, hiding away the distress and pain in his eyes. Han Yi, Before Mei could finish her sentence, the man in front of her had already disappeared. In that instant, Mei felt as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. Even his heart felt empty, as if he had lost the most important thing in the world. She stood there in a daze, forgetting to breathe and even forgetting everything around her. Until Sidu Tinji's hand gently pressed down on her shoulder, his low and hoarse voice softly said, Is that the man you like? He seemed to have misunderstood something. Do you want Gidge to explain it to him? Mei blankly stayed silent for a long time, before she says in a nearly deathly still tone. Chapter 33-29. No need, he's just my partner. What does it matter if it's a misunderstanding or not? I've already decided to live as the leader of the Shen Division, Mei, for the rest of my life, to be loyal to Jun Shang and Mississippi. For a monster that's neither male nor female like me, talking about love is nothing more than a luxury. Isn't it better to cut it off cleanly like this, once and for all? If it doesn't matter, why are you crying? Sidu Tinji's voice is helpless and pitiful. Mei reacts at this time, reaching out her hand to wipe her face. It's cold and damp to the touch. She's crying? Why didn't she feel anything just now? No bitterness, no sadness, no grievance, only empty numbness and coldness. From now on, no one will ignore his cold face and chase after her, calling her little shadow. From now on, no one will risk their life to save her. From now on, no one will be like that fool called Han Yi, who will love her wholeheartedly. Mei raises her head to look at Sidu Tinji, hoarsely saying, I don't want to cry, but I can't stop the tears. Silly girl. Sidu Tinji holds her in his arms, sighing, You've always liked to put on a brave front since you were a child, always wanting to shoulder everything on your shoulders. So many years have passed, why haven't you changed at all? Mei wipes away her tears, pulling out a smile. Go, Miss said that your medicine needs to be decocted, I'll go take a look. He looks at Mei, who has already completely recovered her cold expression. Then he looks at her attire and temperament, which are no different from a man's. Sidu Tinji's brows slightly wrinkle. It's only at this moment that he realizes that even if they're both stubborn, the cold youngster before him is already completely different from his younger sister. He presses down on Mei's shoulder, saying in a low voice, What happened back then? Tell Big Brother in detail, okay? What happened back then? Hearing this question, Mei is distracted for a moment. That was something that happened more than 20 years ago. Even for a cultivator, it's been a long time. So long that she's almost forgotten that nightmarish night. At that time, the Lan family empire hadn't yet fallen into chaos because of the beast god's soul pearl. The power structure of one country, 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects on the floating island was more stable than it was today, but the members were slightly different. Of the 8 sects, there was a sect that no longer existed, the Skyline Palace. Of the 6 families, there was also one that did not have it now, but was ranked last in the past, the Sure family. The Sure family was an expert in formations, and the family head, Sure Huainan, was one of the best formation masters on the floating island at that time. However, Sure Huainan's 2 sons, Sure Yi and Sure Qi, did not have the slightest bit of talent in formations. In particular, Sure Yi had been weak and sickly since he was a child. Not to mention refining formations, even his cultivation was several times more difficult than others. Because there was no successor, the Sure family declined little by little, and they were even about to be kicked out of the 6 great families. It was also at this time that the 3rd daughter of the Sure family, Sure Ying, was born. Sure Huainan had never seen anyone as talented as Sure Ying in battle. Whether it was his sword techniques, formations, or cultivation speed, Sure Ying had far surpassed his peers. However, when she was young, Sure Ying would always see Sure Huainan sighing softly at her. With such talent, why not give it to Sure Yi and Sure Qi? If only it was a boy. Chapter 33:30. Little Sure Ying gripped the long sword in his hand tightly, gritted his teeth, and trained even harder than before. One day she would let her father know. Boys and girls were the same. She, Sure Ying, might be a girl, but she was no worse than a man. As expected, as time passed, Sure Ying grew stronger and stronger. She even defeated a genius from the Sky Air Palace in a competition held by the Lan family empire and was personally rewarded by His Majesty. Ying, now that your cultivation has reached the Earth creation realm, it's time for me to hand over the 7 deadly starlight formations formation disc to you. Looking at the inconspicuous formation disc in her hands, Sure Ying was excited. In reality, she didn't like to forge formations. She preferred to use it to defeat her enemies and make a name for herself. But her father had given her the 7 deadly starlight formation as a recognition of her strength. This made Sure Ying happier than anything else. However, on the night that Sure Huainan handed the formation to Mei, the Sky Air Palace mobilized all their forces to surround the Sure clan. The Sure clan didn't have much fighting power. They were only able to survive until now because of their powerful formations. However, the Sky Air Palace had bribed the Sure clan's servants to destroy the Sure clan's protective formation. Their goal was the 7 deadly starlight formation. But even if they wanted the formation disc, they still wanted the Sure clan's wealth, territory, and everyone's lives. Raging flames ignited in every corner of the Shi clan. Shi Ying didn't even have time to find her mother and brother before she was dragged into a secret chamber by the heavily injured Shi Huainan. Outside, there was a monstrous disaster and an inescapable net with nowhere to run. Smoke billowed in the secret chamber. Spiritual energy and air grew thinner and thinner. This was a sign that the three of them had reached the end of their lives. Shi Huainan held a red formation disc in his hand, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. What he was holding in his hand was not so much an array disc, but a curse insect. By sacrificing one's soul and life, it could send a person away from despair. Shi Ying said without hesitation, "Father, why don't we send Shi Qi away? Let him live on and continue the Shi clan's lineage. I'll stay with you." When the Sky Air Palace arrived, her mother and brother were in the outer court. The outer court was already a sea of fire. There were no survivors. Her brother and mother were already dead. Thinking of this, Shi Ying's tears fell uncontrollably. And she was just a girl. According to his father, there was no way to continue the bloodline of the Shi clan. Only his second brother, Shi Qi, was left. As long as his second brother was still alive, the Shi family would not be considered extinct. Curse Gu activated the teleportation array. The blood-red light was even more dazzling than the fire outside, and it enveloped everyone in the room. Shi Huainan's face instantly aged, and his body slowly went limp as his eyes lost focus. Shi Ying turned to look at Shi Qi. Second brother, quickly, however, before she could finish her sentence, she was pushed into the red light by a palm. Second brother. Shi Ying let out a heart-wrenching scream and wanted to rush out. However, the red light enveloped her and shackled her. Amidst the dazzling redness, she saw her second brother, Shi Qi, giving her a doting smile. "You are my little sister. How can a brother not protect his sister?" The light in Shi Huainan's eyes had not completely disappeared. He looked up and saw Shi Ying in the teleportation array. However, he didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, he revealed a gratified expression and muttered, "Live on. No matter what, you have to live on." Chapter 33-31. No. Father. Second brother. The last thing Shi Ying saw was the fire engulfing everything she loved and was familiar with. When he opened his eyes again, the world had changed, and they were separated by two different worlds. Shi Ying wrapped her chest with a cloth and tied up her long hair with a simple wooden hairpin. She used a fierce killing intent to cover up her daughter's gentleness. She knelt in front of the man she swore loyalty to. "Thank you, Lord, for allowing me to return to the floating island to take revenge. From now on, there will be no more Shi Ying in this world, only Ying Mei, who will be loyal to you for life." Yes, from now on she was no longer Shi Ying, but the leader of the Xian division, Ying Mei. She wasn't a man, so she couldn't continue the bloodline of the Shi family. But at least she could choose to repay Lord's kindness. Perhaps her father's spirit in heaven would be happy to know that she was going to live on as a man? Nonsense! After listening to Ying Mei's calm narration, Sidu Tinji shouted and raised his hand. But the slap didn't go down. In addition to anger, there was more heartache, pity, and regret. When the Skyline Palace suddenly surrounded the Shi family, her mother did almost the same thing as her father. She tricked Shi Yi into taking a pill to fake his death and buried him in the flower bed in the backyard. Then she sacrificed herself to distract the Skyline Palace's troops. The pill only had a time limit of 7 days. Within 7 days, the person who took it would be like a real corpse. No matter how powerful a magic treasure was, it couldn't detect it. But once 7 days passed, the person who took the pill would still be unable to move, and their internal organs and meridians would be damaged bit by bit. Deep in the soil, they couldn't breathe or absorb spiritual energy. If no one came to save him, Shi Yi would suffocate to death underground. Fortunately, 7 days later, Shi Ye's uncle, a member of the Situ clan, saw many extinguished soul lamps coming to their door. In the end, at the critical moment, he dug out Shi Yi, who was on the verge of death, from the ground. From then on, Shi Yi changed his name to Sidu Tinji and survived. In the following years, he never forgot his parents' tragic death and the hatred of the Sher family's extermination. Originally not good at cultivation, he forced himself to cultivate day and night, even at the cost of his lifespan. At the same time, the Situ clan, which was originally a third-rate sect, gradually became more and more prosperous under his management. But just as Situ Tinji felt that he had the qualifications to take revenge on the Sky Air Palace, he received news that the Sky Air Palace had been utterly destroyed. At that time, how could Situ Tinji have thought of this? The one who destroyed the Heavenly Palace was actually his little sister, who had just barely escaped death. And what exactly had his sister shouldered all these years for the sake of revenge and the destruction of the Sher family? The hand that was swung down touched Ing Mei's cheek. Situ Tinji's voice was gentle, but the tears in her eyes almost fell. Do you still not understand? Father and Sher Chi let you enter the teleportation array because they want you to live well and not carry guilt and torment for the rest of your life. Just like how his mother had resolutely left the hope of life to him. In the end, she still couldn't hold back her tears. Have you always felt that father was too harsh on you, that he valued boys over girls and hoped that you would be a son so that you could inherit the Sher family's lineage and continue the family line? Ing Mei looked up at her brother. Isn't it? Of course not. Situ Tinji sighed softly. The Sher family's array, especially the 7-killing Starlight array that has been passed down for generations, increases yang energy and damages yin energy. Chapter 33-32. Men won't be harmed if they practice it, but women who practice it may ruin their appearance and speed up their aging. Father knows you're strong, but he's also a father, and he doesn't want to see his only daughter work so hard. He wants our little Inger to be happy, grow up unfettered, find the man she loves, get married and have children, and live a peaceful and carefree life. But our little Inger is so outstanding, which makes us worry and proud. Father has always been proud of you. Ing Mei looked at her brother in a daze, tears unknowingly falling from her eyes. Is it true? Father doesn't dislike her for being a woman? He doesn't blame her for not being able to inherit the Sher family's bloodline? Father has always been proud of her? Tears fell down like a broken dam, but she held them back with all her might. Situ Tinji glanced at the empty doorway and said softly, "The nightmare from 20 years ago is over. You've gotten your revenge and become so outstanding. From now on, don't carry such a heavy burden on your shoulders, okay? Even if the Sher family needs a son to carry on the family line, there's still Big Brother. Little Ing, it's time to put down the burden on your shoulders and pursue the happiness that belongs to you. If you miss the man you love, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Ing Mei listened blankly, then suddenly gritted her teeth and disappeared. Situ Tinji was startled, but when he realized that his sister's cultivation had reached such a high level, he couldn't help but smile proudly. Father, mother, second brother, did you see that? This is our little Ing. She has become so powerful. And she will be very happy, very happy. The Sher family will not be destroyed. Little Inger and I will carry your hopes and live on. Mount Lingmiao, Drunken Firmament Building. The sound of stringed instruments, accompanied by a suffocating fragrance of cosmetics, drifted out from the inside in wisps. This was the largest brothel in Mount Lingmiao. It was also the most lively and ecstatic place every day. At this time, in the most luxurious room of Drunken Firmament Building, several enchanting and charming women were surrounding a man at the table in the middle, trying to please him. "Sir, since you've come to our Drunken Firmament Building, are you here to enjoy yourself? How can you just drink? Hee, if I want to drink wine, that's fine too. I can feed you with my mouth." With a cold face, Han Yi drains the wine in the pot in one gulp. Feeling a fragrant body next to him, he felt nauseous and suddenly pushed her down. "Sir, why are you so rude?" The woman who was pushed over cried out in pain. But he didn't give up, and continued to come closer. "Sir, you came to our Drunken Firmament Building alone to drink to drown your sorrows. Is there something sad on your mind? Could it be that you were hurt by some vixen?" It's just a woman." Our Drunken Firmament Building has many things to do, so why does Sir want to hang yourself on a single tree? We guarantee that as long as you have a taste of us sisters, You will definitely forget about those wild vixens. Bang! The door was smashed open. Or rather, he was directly trampled into a pulp. Han Yi, who's impatiently drinking, suddenly lifts his head. His eyes brighten when he sees the person approaching, and he wants to stand up. However, he thought of something. He clenched his teeth, sat back down, and drank the wine in the pot in one gulp. Chapter 33-33. Han Yi even reaches out to pull the woman sitting next to him into his arms. The corners of his mouth rise in a provocative smile, and he looks at the person. Oh, I was wondering who it was? So it's Mei. Before, when I invited you to the brothel, you always used all sorts of excuses. What, now you want to have a taste of this ecstasy? The woman sitting next to him is startled at first, then she immediately shows a flattering smile. Her soft, boneless hand picks up the wine glass in front of her and brings it to Han Ye's lips. Yi, come, this servant will feed you. Han Ye's gaze falls on Mei without blinking. Even though the scent of the woman coming closer makes him nauseous, he still makes a look of enjoyment and leans over to drink the wine in the glass in one gulp. However, before his lips could touch the glass, the woman's wrist is already firmly gripped. Ouch, it hurts. The courtesan is in so much pain that her tears almost fall out. But with good professionalism, she still shows a fawning smile to Mei. How can this Yi be so rude? Could it be that you're not satisfied with our sister's service? Mei exerts force on the woman's wrist. The courtesan screams, and the wine glass falls to the ground, falling into Mei's palm. Mei raises the glass and drinks it without hesitation. Then, under everyone's shocked gaze, she sits down on the left side of Han Yi with a golden knife. Her sharp gaze sweeps over, and her cold voice carries a bit of chilliness. What are you standing there for? Still not going to serve me wine? For the past 20 years, Mei has always been dressed as a man, and she's also the leader of the Xian department. That kind of resolute and fierce pressure is deeply engraved in her bones. Therefore, even if she has a handsome appearance and looks like a good woman, no one would think that she's a woman. They only feel that this is a handsome young man that can make people's hearts thump uncontrollably. The courtesan girls look at each other in dismay. Just a moment ago, they were still a bit afraid of Mei's coldness, but right now, they can't help but be happy, their cheeks blushing. Oh my! Today, these two guests are really more handsome than the other. Serving such a handsome man was much better than serving those ugly, fat people. Moreover, looking at these two people's imposing manner and the magic weapons on their waists, one can tell that they have an extraordinary background and are extravagant. If he served her well, he might be able to achieve meteoric success. The woman, whose wrist had been grabbed by Mei and who had screamed miserably, now had a bright smile on her face. She pulled her clothes down again. She stroked her hair with her fingers and sat beside Mei with a sweet smile. While pouring wine for Mei, she rubbed her body against Mei's elbow and said, "Dear guest, my name is Xiang Yun. I admire a handsome young man like you the most. How about I serve you today?" Mei glanced at her, the corner of her mouth hooked up, revealing a faint smile. Sure. The youth's smile instantly diluted the hostility and coldness between her brows. Her red lips and white teeth made her look even more romantic and charming, causing one's heart to shake uncontrollably. Xiang Yun's face turned even redder. Her eyes were like silk, and she couldn't help but press her hands on the back of Mei's hands. She timidly said, "Lang Jun is so naughty. Just now, you used so much force that it scared me. If you don't believe me, you can touch it. My little heart is still pounding right now." After saying that, she grabbed Mei's hands and put them on her body. Bang! With a loud noise, the whole table was suddenly overturned. The exquisite dishes and wine on the table spilled all over the floor. Chapter 33-34. The courtesans of Zhexiaolu are scared silly, each and every one of them blankly stare at the ashen-faced youth. Han Yi steps forward in large strides, ruthlessly flinging away the fragrant cloud that stuck to Mei's body. "Get lost. Dear customer, what's wrong with you? I told you to get out, did you hear me?" A bone-chilling killing intent abruptly spreads out, and each and every one of these courtesans are scared witless. In just a moment, they've already escaped without a trace. The only one who's as calm as before is Mei. She puts down the wine glass and slowly stands up, about to walk out. But before she could take 2 steps, her wrist is gripped, and she's firmly pulled back. Where do you think you're going? The 5 fingers that are gripping her wrist tighter and tighter, almost making a crackling sound from the bones. But to Mei, it's as if she doesn't feel this pain at all. She calmly looks at the man in front of her, indifferently saying, "Didn't you tell me to get lost?" Han Ye's expression stagnates. The 5 fingers that are gripping her wrist also slightly loosen. But in just a split second, his complexion sinks, his expression becoming even more distorted. "Have you been wanting to leave me for a long time? In your heart, it's always been me who disliked me, isn't it? From the very beginning when we entered the polar domain, you've been ignoring me. I've been shamelessly following behind you, wishfully treating you as a friend." Later on, when he found out that Mei is a woman, his heart sank without any resistance. From then on, there's only the shadow of this cold youngster in his mind and eyes. In the middle of the night, he dreams of imprisoning her in his arms forever, making her unable to escape. But Han Yi is so afraid. He's afraid that Mei's smile and kindness towards him is just gratitude for his life-saving grace, just a superficial courtesy. Han Yi reveals a distressed smile, slowly loosening his grip on Mei's wrist. "I should have known that you wouldn't say it on the surface, but in your heart, you must be sick of me, now that you've met the man you like." When he says the last few words, Han Ye's voice is hoarse and astringent, almost unable to continue. "You can finally justifiably leave?" His astringent voice doesn't continue, disappearing under the soft touch of her lips. Han Yi stares blankly at those clear and elegant brows that are within reach. Her long eyelashes drooped down, covering her clear eyes that were as black as ink. The teenager's expression was calm, but the hand that grabbed his collar was trembling slightly. Her long and thick eyelashes trembled slightly. It was evident that she was panicking and nervous at this moment. Han Yi blankly stares at this scene, smelling the familiar scent that fills the tip of his nose. For a moment, he was unable to react to what had happened. Mei was kissing him. Mei was kissing her? Han Yi suddenly quivers from head to toe, all the hair on his body almost standing on end. He opened his mouth, not knowing what he wanted to say or do. The hand on his collar had already loosened. Then, the familiar aura and soft touch left him. Han Yi feels a sense of loss in his heart. Seeing that Mei, whose ears are slightly red, is about to leave, Han Yi almost instinctively reaches out to pull her into his arms, firmly imprisoning her. However, what should he do after he was imprisoned? Han Yi blankly licks his lips. After a long while, he finally stutters and says cautiously, "Mei, you just kissed me." The youngster in his arms unnaturally shifts his body. In the end, he lowers his brows and softly utters an N. Chapter 33-35. "You? Why did you kiss me? Don't you hate me?" Mei rolls her eyes at him. "Idiot." Saying that, she pushes him away and turns to leave. Han Yi suddenly sobers up, tightly clenching his hands and shouting, "You're not allowed to go." Mei casts him a sidelong glance. "Are you ordering me?" Han Ye's eyes are flustered, his face flushed, but he refuses to let go no matter what. After a long time, he squeezes out, You kissed me, so you have to take responsibility." Mei is amused by him. "I have to take responsibility for a kiss?" Han Yi nods again and again. Mei slightly lowers her eyes, suddenly grabs his lapel and gently pushes him down on the bed. She kisses him once again. A low, hoarse voice vaguely sounds, "What about now? How do I take responsibility?" Han Ye's eyes are once again dyed crimson. But it's different from the previous resentment and jealousy. This time, he breathes heavily, unable to bear it any longer. He turns over and reverses their positions. "Mei, don't torture me anymore. I want to think that I'm in love again and again. If you don't like me," Mei narrows her eyes, "what about you? Loitering around the brothel every day, looking for girls to accompany you?" Meeting those cold and beautiful eyes filled with murderous intent, Han Yi is instantly terrified. I didn't. I just want to annoy you, those girls, I didn't even touch a finger. Ing Mei, I've only liked you, one girl. You have to believe me. Ing Mei's mouth hooks up, but she immediately presses it down, whispering, but I'm not a woman. Even if I'm willing to restore your identity as a woman, I can't learn those womanly charms again. I can't abandon the Xian department and be your wife with peace of mind. I might not even be able to bear children for you. Ing Mei says a bunch of things, but finds that the man who is looking down at her has a blank expression, as if he's stupid. Her heart aches, and she wants to push him away. But she hears Han Yi suddenly stuttering, Little Shadow, what did you just say? You said that you're willing to restore my identity as a woman? What do you mean by that? The pain in her heart is like being gently scratched by a feather, disappearing without a trace in a flash. Ing Mei looked at the silly look of the man in front of her, and her heart was filled with unprecedented peace and sweetness. Han Yi grabs her hand, impatiently wanting to ask for a statement, but because he's too nervous, he's timid. Ing Mei, does this mean that you also like me a little? Ing Mei sighed and muttered silently, not just a little, but a lot. However, Han Yi doesn't hear these words. Seeing that Ing Mei was about to let go of his hand after he finished speaking, he got up. Han Yi doesn't know where his courage and strength comes from, but he clasps both of her hands and heavily pushes her back. Ing Mei. Seeing that the man was so anxious that his eyes were about to turn red, the smile on Ing Mei's face became more and more tender. However, she had always been cold and emotionless. Her 7 emotions and 6 desires would not show on her face. Therefore, in Han Ye's view, the youngster under him still has an indifferent expression, as if disdainful of his anxiety. However, just as Han Ye's heart sinks bit by bit, thinking that he's once again being delusional, he hears Ing Mei's cool and calm voice, with a slight hoarseness, Idiot, if you still don't understand, then it's better for us to cook the uncooked rice right now. Raw? Cook the uncooked rice. Chapter 33-36. Han Ye's body suddenly stiffens. His eyes stare at the face that he yearns for day and night, completely stupefied. By the time he reacts to what Ing Mei said, his whole body turns red like a shrimp, hot air spurting out of his eyes, ears, mouth and nose. Ing Mei, do you know what cooked rice means? You don't talk nonsense. Nonsense? You have to take responsibility for a kiss. After cooked rice, you will completely belong to me. How is that nonsense? Ing Mei raises her eyebrows, but if you don't want to, then forget it. Saying that, she pushes him away and gets up. At this moment, Han Yi, whose brain had just stopped working, finally comes back to his senses. He doesn't even think about it and pulls her into his arms. Cook. Must cook. Today we'll cook the rice. Outside the largest private room on the 2nd floor of Drunken Heaven restaurant. From time to time, brightly dressed prostitutes stick their heads out to look inside. It's already been one night, those 2 gongzi still haven't come out? Bah! Bad luck. I thought that we could properly serve the 2 best officials who came last night. I didn't expect that the 2 of them would actually have that kind of relationship. What's wrong with that kind of relationship? Xiang Yun puts her hands on her hips, unconvinced. These 2 gongzi are a perfect match, a match made in heaven and earth. They're much better than those stinky men who look at women with lustful eyes. Hee, guess which one of them is on top, and which one is below. Boo hoo hoo, this servant really wants to go in and take a look. Just as she says that, the door to the room suddenly opens without warning. A handsome young man, dressed in black, tight-fitting embroidered clothes, comes out from inside, his face expressionless. Seeing the crowd gathered outside, his expression doesn't change, and he directly throws a crystal to Xiang Yun. Xiang Yun catches the crystal in a flurry, her heart delighted. Most of the prostitutes in Drunken Heaven restaurant are only low-level mortal cultivators. In the past, most of the guests who come here were given low-grade crystals. But this crystal in her hand, even if she doesn't probe it, she can feel the richness of its spiritual power. This is definitely a high-grade crystal. Just as this thought crossed her mind, Fragrant Cloud looked down at the crystal in her hand, and her eyes widened. She cried out, "Obsidian crystal?" She was so frightened that she almost threw away the crystal in her hand. He looked at Ing Mei in panic. "Sir, you must have made a mistake. This is obsidian crystal." Just as Ing Mei was about to speak, another crystal was tossed into Xiang Yun's hand. The young man's giggling voice could be heard. "That's right, I'm in a good mood today. How about I reward you with another piece of obsidian crystal?" These obsidian crystals were all confiscated from the Clear Sky sect by Han Yi. Most of them stayed in Liberty City. But because he had to travel a long distance to find Ing Mei, he couldn't bring anything from the Xiuxian continent to the lower realm, except for those special materials. Therefore, Han Yi hides a few pieces of obsidian crystals as travel expenses on the road. Ing Mei gives him a sidelong glance and says with a smile that isn't a smile, "Is Han Yi Gongzi very extravagant? Seems like you can handle these places with ease." Han Yi wraps his arm around Ing Mei's waist, laughing awkwardly. "How could I? I'm just a woman who follows her husband's tune, that's all." Ing Mei's face couldn't help but break into laughter. Silly. She very rarely shows such a brilliant smile. For a moment, it's like the melting of ice and snow and the blooming of 100 flowers. Han Yi is practically dumbfounded. There's something stirring inside him, but it's replaced by endless happiness and sweetness. Chapter 33-37. Little Shadow, I'm so happy. Disregarding the onlookers, Han Yi lowers his head and presses it against Ing Mei's, murmuring in a low voice, "I've never been so happy in my life." Ing Mei hooks up her lips. "I'm also very happy. From now on you're mine." Han Yi nods without hesitation. "I'm yours in this life, my next life, and the life after that." The two of them leave intimately. The people of Drunken Heaven building look at the obsidian crystal in Xiang Yun's hand, then at the suddenly disappearing figure on the walkway. For a moment, they're all stunned. After a long while, someone murmurs, "I thought that cold youngster was down there, but it turns out, in front of Ruan Yanin's stone house." She sees Sidu Tinji sunbathing in front of the stone house, being served by Shu Jian and Shu Mo. The smile on Han Ye's face disappears without a trace. He firmly grabs Ing Mei's hand, his face full of jealousy and possessiveness. But the words that come out are still soft and flattering. "Little Shadow, what are we doing in this damned place? Where's Jun Shang and Miss? They don't seem to be here, let's go find them, okay?" Ing Mei looks at him in amusement, grabbing him with a backhand. "I'm going to take you to see someone." Han Yi is unwillingly dragged away by her, muttering indignantly as he walks, "Little Shadow, what's so good about that sickly man? He can't lift his hands or carry his shoulders, how can he take care of you? Moreover, this kind of hypocrite is the best at putting on an act, but he's actually very hypocritical on the inside. Don't be fooled by them." As they were talking, the two have already arrived in front of Situ Tinji. Han Ye's last words aren't hushed at all, so it reaches Sidu Tinji's and Shu Jian's ears as expected. Shu Jian and Shu Mo's complexion becomes very unsightly in a split second. They fiercely glare at Han Yi, angrily saying, "Who are you calling a hypocrite?" "Hee, whoever puts on an act is a hypocrite." Sidu Tinji stops Shu Jian and Shu Mo's outburst, chuckling as he looks at Han Yi. "You're saying I'm a hypocrite? Isn't it?" Han Yi sneers, narrowing his eyes, suddenly releasing a strong pressure. "You've just met a person, acting as if you're concerned, but you're actually taking advantage. If you are not a hypocrite, then you are a lecher." What is the level of Han Ye's cultivation? The heavenly Tao restriction on the floating island was not as strong as it was on the cultivation continent. Sidu Tinji and Shu Jian's faces turn pale. But Ing Mei slaps Han Ye's head, dispersing that oppressive pressure in a split second. Han Yi is both shocked and angry, glaring at Ing Mei in grievance. "Little Shadow, you hit me for an outsider? What kind of person was he? We've only met a few times and you're already protecting him like this?" Han Yi is 100% sure that there's no such person as Situ Tinji at Ing Mei's side. And with Sidu Tinji's cultivation, he was clearly unable to ascend from the floating islands to the cultivation continent. Therefore, the two of them must have just met. Ing Mei, such an indifferent person, is actually so affectionate towards a stranger he just met. This makes Han Yi go mad with jealousy. Sidu Tinji looks up and down at Han Yi and Ing Mei, whose expressions and movements are unconsciously affectionate. The smile at the corner of his mouth can't help but deepen. This is the Han Yi you were talking about? Ing Mei blushes inexplicably and embarrassedly. Remembering what Han Yi had just said, she can't help but forcefully explain. He's usually not that stupid, it's just that there are times when he can't wrap his head around things. Don't lower yourself to his level. Chapter 33-38. Han Yi simply bursts with anger. What do you mean he won't lower himself to my level? However, Ing Mei's next words make his roar come to an abrupt end, and his whole person freezes. Go, he is the man I've decided on in this life, Han Yi. Go? Pinching the messenger crane, Mayan couldn't help but reveal a smile. It turns out that Sidu Tinji is Ing Mei's older brother. Meeting Sidu Tinji this time is really a pleasant surprise. Now it seems that the knot in Ing Mei's heart has finally been untied. She and Han Yi can finally be a family. On the side, Di Mingju is also holding a messenger crane in his hand, but he casually squeezes it. It turns into powder, and the fine pieces fall down. Oh! Mayan looks strangely at the man next to her. Who sent the crane? Mayan is even more curious. Han Yi? What message did he send? There's a moment of silence, and after a long time, she hears a low and indifferent voice. He asked Ben Jun to approve his and Ing Mei's marriage. Mayan happily says, Tifiske, it seems that the two of them are really developing at lightning speed. Did you approve? Di Mingju faintly looks at her and unhurriedly says, no. What? Mayan is shocked. Why not? Di Mingju grabs her soft boneless hand and gently squeezes it. His fingertips trace the lines on her palm, and he carelessly says, Ben Jun hasn't gotten married yet. Why should they get married? Mayan. Jun Shangren, can you be a little more narrow-minded? Di Mingju leans down and sticks close to her ear, saying in a low voice, Mayan, if you want them to get married as soon as possible, then promise to marry Ben Jun as soon as possible, and then personally preside over them. Mayan's heart trembles. She only feels like a kitten is gently scratching her letter, making her whole body go limp and numb. This is the man that she, Jun Mayan, has fallen in love with. Sometimes overbearing, sometimes narrow-minded, sometimes tsundere, and also easily jealous. But among the countless living beings in the world, in the vast sea of people, there's only this one that she can wholeheartedly love, wholeheartedly rely on. No matter how many difficulties and obstacles there are in the road ahead, as long as she knows that this person is waiting in front, she has nothing to fear. But she wanted to get married as soon as possible. Mu Yen thought gloomily, but she hasn't found her biological father, Jun Xiuan, and broken off the engagement. Even if she wants to get married, there's nothing she can do. Dr. Jun, are you ready? Heng's voice came from outside. We are going to the headquarters of the Sacred Heaven Alliance. After a few days of observation and selection, the Sacred Heaven Alliance chose 5 of the most skilled physicians from the invited physicians to treat Xiang Yunzhou. The remaining doctors gave them generous rewards and respectfully sent them off. Among these 5 people were He Kaizu, the traveling immortal doctor, Wen Jian, the first divine physician of the Lan royal family, Han Song, the beast soul doctor, Beiying Feilu, a female doctor from the Beitang branch who specialized in the way of witch medicine, and the last one, Jun Mayan, who was unknown but was fully recommended by Zhang Heng. Is this the headquarters of the Sacred Heaven Alliance? The moment they stepped into the magnificent building, they couldn't help but exclaim. Along the way, Mayan has seen a lot of strange things. Looking at the scene before him, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Was the headquarters of the Sacred Heaven Alliance luxurious and gorgeous? Magnificent and domineering? Exquisite and graceful? No, neither. He was just too special. Chapter 33-39. As soon as the 5 of them entered the hall, the ground under their feet split and spun. Before they could react, they were sent to their respective positions. A shiny silver ball floats in front of Mu Yen, letting out a childlike voice. Distinguished guest, please take a seat. Mu Yen can't help but use her divine sense to examine the ball. She found that it's not a living thing, but a Dharma treasure. And a Dharma treasure that doesn't have a spirit. But it clearly doesn't have a spirit, how can it speak? Mu Yen absent-mindedly sits down, and the silver ball immediately speaks again. Distinguished guest, would you like to enjoy some refreshments? Today's refreshments are snow lotus crisp, hibiscus cake, and fresh fish soup. Which would you like? Or perhaps this little one would like to bring you a portion of each. It can even serve refreshments? Mu Yen subconsciously replies, hibiscus cake. Very well, please wait a moment, distinguished guest. Mu Yen is thinking about how to serve the refreshments with this little ball. A few tentacles stretch out from the silver ball and fly out. A moment later, a steaming hot and fragrant refreshments are brought to the table. Esteemed guest, please enjoy. Mu Yan's eyes shine brightly. What is this little thing? Isn't it too interesting? Damn, is this an AI? Bai Xie's excited and dreamy voice suddenly comes to her ears. So the cultivation world's refining methods can also refine AI? You must be joking. The little phoenix happily says, little brother, pretty sister, this is so fun. If only we could raise one in the space. Even Xiao Bao, who has always been precocious and has no interest in toys, also shows a curious expression in the space. Only Qi Huang disdainfully rolls his eyes. What kind of trash is this? This kind of inferior goods, they didn't even have the qualifications to serve this sage. Even if they were placed in the mining area to do repetitive work, I still despise them for being too slow, too stupid. What kind of eyes do you have? Even this kind of trash can enter your eyes. Mu Yen is surprised. Qi Huang, have you seen this kind of Dharma treasure before? Where did you see it? Qi Huang stares blankly. A bit of confusion appears on his face. His hands hanging by his side unconsciously clenches. That's right. He has seen this kind of Dharma treasure before? Seems like he has. But where had he seen it before? Qi Xiaohuang? Why do you care if I've seen him or not? Qi Huang abruptly comes back to his senses and says with a sour face, in short, as the master of the Tian Mo Qin, you're not allowed to make a fuss over nothing. Showing this kind of stupid look that hasn't seen the world, even if you don't find it embarrassing, this Zun finds it embarrassing. Mu Yen rolls her eyes. Diske, how did she lose face? Other than Wen Jian, the other three were also shocked by the little thing in front of them. What's wrong with her making a fuss about nothing? Han Song and Baiting Feilu were even more excited as they circled around the little silver ball and shouted. She was already very calm. All right. 5 great doctors, welcome to the Sacred Heaven Alliance. A low and deep voice suddenly came from the upper left. Mu Yen raised his head to look and saw an old man leading 5 young men dressed in the same clothes walking over. Among the 5 young men, one of them was Zhang Heng, who had recommended Mu Yen. Seeing that he had attracted their attention, the elder smiled lightly and said, I am Wu Chen, the steward of the Sacred Heaven Alliance. It is our Sacred Heaven Alliance's honor to be able to invite all the doctors here to treat our Alliance Master. Chapter 3340. To express my gratitude, regardless of the outcome of this treatment, I will give you this little toy, the silver centipede, as a gift. You only need to use your divine sense to control the core artifact embedded in the silver centipede, and you can give it some simple commands. In addition to daily use, this silver centipede can also provide you with more than 5 times of defense, and its defense can block a single attack from a peak Earth creation expert. Mu Yen did not hear what Steward Wu said after that, because her ears were already filled with the excited cries of a few little fellows. If not for the current situation, the little fellows would have immediately grabbed the silver centipede outside and played with it. Crack! A shattering sound was heard. Mu Yen turns her head to look and sees that Wen Jin has crushed the silver ball floating in front of him. He revealed an arrogant and disdainful smile. This old man came all the way to the Sacred Heaven Alliance, not for a little toy like the silver centipede. What this old man wants is your Sacred Heaven Alliance's treasure, the 9th Heaven Thunderblade. Steward Wu's expression changed, his brows darkening. Zhang Heng and the others behind him also had ugly expressions, and could not help but say, "Dr. Wen, are you mistaken? The condition of our Sacred Heaven Alliance seeking a doctor is the artifact that the Alliance Master personally refined after recovering, not the Ninth Heaven Thunderblade. In this world, besides me, who can cure Xiang Yunzhou's illness?" When Jian looked disdainfully at Steward Wu and the others, his face full of contempt. "Do you think that the Sacred Heaven Alliance is qualified to negotiate with me? Without me, who else can you rely on? On this group of trash?" Steward Wu and the others had ugly expressions when they heard this. Even He Kaizu and the others' faces darkened. Especially the young Baiting Feilu, who immediately abandoned the silver centipede and said angrily, "Dr. Wen, we have always been respectful to you because we respect you as an elder, but don't go too far. Are you the only powerful doctor in this world, Wen Jian?" Wen Jian turned to look at Baiting Feilu, then at He Kaizu and Han Song, raising his brows. "Why are you all looking at me like this? Do you really think that you can beat me in medical skills?" He Kaizu's face darkened as he said coldly, "There is no difference in medical skills. It only depends on whether you can relieve the patient's pain. Dr. Wen, since you are the best doctor of Floating Island, you should know the principle of a doctor's benevolence." "That's right." Han Song's voice was especially loud. When he shouted, one could hear the echoes. "You haven't even seen Alliance leader Xiang's illness before and you dare to boast so shamelessly. Isn't this a bit too arrogant?" Mu Yin didn't say anything. Instead, she stood beside He Kaizu and the others, expressing her attitude. Her expression was calm, and she was not as angry as the others. However, her eyes were staring deeply at Wenjin, and the corners of her lips curled into a cold smile. Was this the person who drugged Ingmei's brother with the unknown drug that would make him addicted? Ingmei's revenge, should he help her get back some interest at the same time? He Kaizu saw that the other three doctors are on his side and felt much more confident. He turned his head to look at Steward Wu and asked in a clear voice, "Where is Alliance leader Xiang? His illness cannot be delayed. I don't think there's any need to waste time here. Let's go take a look at Chief Xiang's condition first." Steward Wu showed gratitude and extended his hand. "This way please, the silver centipede will also show you the way." Chapter 3341. Are you qualified to touch this old man's patients? Just then, Wen Jian's sneer interrupted Steward Wu's words. Immediately after, 4 rays of light flew out from Wen Jian's hands, heading straight for Mayan's group. "Ah? What's that? Wen Jian, what are you doing?" Mayan's reaction was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, she had already silently caught the flying thing. A heart-wrenching pain came from her palm. Something was desperately trying to drill into her skin, follow her meridians, and invade her lungs. Mayan's eyes turned cold, and the corners of her mouth faintly hooked up. "Goo. It's a goo." Beitang Feilu's complexion was ashen. She quickly took out a crimson awl and pierced several acupoints on her body. She fiercely glared at Wenjin, gnashing her teeth. "Wenjin, we met by chance, and there is no enmity between us. How dare you poison us?" If she wasn't originally a female doctor proficient in witchcraft, the goo would have entered her body by now. He Kaizu and Han Song were obviously not so lucky and had already fallen to the ground with a scream. Everyone's complexion was deathly pale, and their bodies were curled up and trembling violently. Painful groans came from their mouths. Bang Feilu looked at the miserable state of the two, and her heart was filled with lingering fear. Fortunately, the goo was ineffective against her. But she couldn't deal with Wen Jian alone. She had to save He Kaizu and Han Song first. Thinking like this, Bang Feilu once again took out a crimson awl and walked towards He Kaizu. Wen Jian watched this scene from the side. Not only did she not panic, she even revealed a mocking smile. The next moment, Baiting Feilu, who had just taken 2 steps, suddenly screamed and fell to her knees. On her fair arm, there was a small bulge that was moving rapidly towards her heart. How could this be? How could this be? I clearly had the goo under control. Beitang Feilu completely panicked, screaming to force the goo out of her body. But the more she used spiritual power, the faster the goo moved through her meridians. Not long after, she fell to the ground like He Kaizu and Han Song, twitching and moaning in pain. Steward Wu said angrily, "Dr. Wen, what are you doing?" Wen Jian sneered, his expression arrogant and disdainful. Hee, weren't these people clamoring to compete with this old man in medical skills? Am I not giving them a chance? Looking at He Kaizu and the other two screaming on the ground, then looking at Mu Yen, who was sitting on the side. Although she didn't make any sound, her head was lowered, and her expression couldn't be seen clearly. Wen Jian could not help but laugh out loud. "You can't even cure the poison that I released. With your medical skills, you are not even worthy of carrying my shoes." When he finished, he looked at Wu Chen and the rest. "Steward Wu, now you should know who to rely on to cure Alliance Chief Xiang's illness, right? What are you standing there for? Hurry up and lead the way." Steward Wu's face darkened when he saw Wen Jian's smug look. They dared to make a move in the territory of the Sacred Heaven Alliance. This Wen Jian was too arrogant. He was looking down on the Sacred Heaven Alliance. Moreover, the ninth Heaven Thundersaber was a sacred object passed down from generation to generation in the Sacred Heaven Alliance. Where did Wen Jian get the face to ask for this thing? Steward Wu was furious, but he couldn't let it out. The Alliance Chief. The Alliance Chief was already in danger. Chapter 3342. On the floating island, perhaps only Steward Wu can cure him. Steward Wu coldly says, "Please cure them of the goo poison, Dr. Wen. These people are all honored guests invited by my Sacred Heaven Alliance. Don't worry. They won't die for a while." Wen Jian sneers, "After I've treated Alliance Master Xiang and obtained the 9 Heavens Thunderblade, this old man will naturally spare their lowly lives." Steward Wu takes a deep breath. "Then please follow me to see the Alliance Master, Dr. Wen." Wen Jian laughs 3 times, brushes his clothes, and is about to follow. However, at this moment, a light and sweet-sounding female voice comes from behind him. "Isn't it a medical competition? It's not over yet. Why is Dr. Wen leaving?" Wen Jian suddenly turns his head. Looking at the smiling girl under the illumination of the crystal, he reveals an incredulous expression. You weren't poisoned by my goo?" "So the thing that Dr. Wen just sent was a goo poison? I'm sorry, I didn't notice it." Mayan beckons with her hand, and a chubby, soft, white-furred rabbit appears in her arms, its mouth flattening as it eats something, because it's already been eaten by my family's summoned beast. What a joke! That's the Een snake goo, one of the top 10 poisons of the floating island. Even if a commander-level summoned beast eats it, it will also die. How can a mere rabbit that isn't even an elite level not die after swallowing the Een snake goo? Wen Jian roars, and another ray of light flies out from his hand. "Dr. Jun, be careful." Hung shouts, and the sword in his hand is already unsheathed. However, the next moment, a scene that makes everyone dumbfounded happens. They see that the fat rabbit that is lazily lying in Mayan's arms, seemingly too lazy to even move, suddenly leaps up, catching the flying Een snake goo in the air, and swallows it into its small mouth. Gudgy gudgy. It's unknown whether it's chewing or digesting, but the sound echoes in the spacious hall. It's particularly strange. Burp, after the fat rabbit finishes eating, it burps and wags its short tail at Mu Yen. Mu Yen looked at Wen Jian with a smile. "Dr. Wen, it seems that your Een snake goo tastes good. My fat rabbit is a picky eater. It's not easy to find something to his liking. Why don't you send some more?" Wen Jian was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Damn it! How could there be such a summoned beast? Een snake goo, that was an extremely poisonous Een snake goo. How could he be fine after swallowing it? Steward Wu and the others were also dumbfounded. "Little girl, don't be too arrogant." Wen Jian gritted her teeth. "So what if you have a summoned beast that can eat the Een snake goo? Can this prove your medical skills?" Mayan looks up at him like she's looking at an idiot. Did I say that the fat rabbit was proving my medical skills? The one who wants to prove his medical skills is naturally. Before she could finish, she saw He Kaizu, Han Song, and Baiting Feilu slowly crawl up from the ground one by one. "Many thanks for Dr. Jun's life-saving grace." He Kaizu and Han Song deeply bow towards Mayan, their faces full of gratitude. Bingfelu, who is also a woman, intimately leans over to Mayan's side, and with a face full of lingering fear, she says, "I thought I was dead for sure. Dr. June, fortunately we have you. Otherwise, even if we could survive, we would definitely be humiliated by that unscrupulous poison doctor." Chapter 33-43. Mu Yen smiled casually, then looked at the shocked Wenjian. "Dr. Wen, why aren't you speaking? Didn't you say that you want to compete in medical skills? How does Dr. Wen want to compete?" Wenjian's face turned green and white, staring at Mu Yen in bewilderment. This little girl of unknown origin. She was the one he looked down on the most in the beginning. A waste that hadn't even reached the profound life realm. He didn't know what the Sacred Heaven Alliance was thinking, to find such a trash to treat Xiang Yunzhou. However, the truth slapped him hard in the face. She actually cured the Yin snake goo? But how did she cure it? He didn't even see how the little girl did it. Cough, cough. Steward Wu walked down the stairs with a smile on his face. He respectfully bowed to Mu Yen, then said in a clear voice, "Doctors, the Alliance Master has been waiting for a long time, please follow me in." Although Wen Jian was irritating, but his medical skills were superb. For the sake of the Alliance Master's life, Steward Wu didn't want Mu Yen to go against him at this moment. Mu Yen looked at Wen Jian with a faint smile, then turned to follow Steward Wu. "It's so cold." "Steward Wu, where is Alliance Master Xiang?" On the long walkway, there were illumination stones placed every few meters on the walls on both sides. But at this time, these stones were covered in a thick layer of frost, causing the entire walkway to be dark. Everyone present was a cultivator. Apart from Mu Yen, who was at the peak of the mortal cultivation realm, the others were all above the profound life realm. But even so, everyone felt a bone-piercing chill penetrating their bodies as they walked on the long walkway. Beitang Felu was the first one who couldn't take it anymore. Steward Wu showed an apologetic expression. "Please forgive us, doctors. Our Alliance Master's illness is a bit special. Only in such an environment can he preserve his life. But even so, he can't hold on much longer." What kind of illness is Alliance Master Xiang suffering from? Could it be that his meridians were injured by a fire attribute skill? "Steward Wu, Dr. Bing, you'll know in a while." Even Mu Yen couldn't help showing a curious expression. However, he doesn't seem to have heard her words. He lowers his eyes and his cold gaze sweeps over Mu Yen. The corner of his mouth hooks up into a strange smile. After an unknown period of time, the surrounding temperature became colder and colder. Yet, under such cold weather, Steward Wu warned everyone not to use any method to warm themselves. Otherwise, they would attract a terrifying disaster. Just when the few of them were almost unable to withstand the cold, the passage finally came to an end. A door covered in a thick layer of frost appeared in front of him. Steward Wu placed his trembling hand on the door and pushed with all his might. The layer of ice shattered, revealing the interior of the house. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Hikaizu looked at Steward Wu in disbelief. That's Alliance leader Xiang. A few years ago, Hikaizu had met Xiang Yunzhou once. At that time, the Alliance Master of the Sacred Heaven Alliance was still an elegant middle-aged man. Although there were already fine wrinkles on his face and some white hair on his temples, he gave people a feeling that he was handsome and high-spirited. Xiang Yunzhou was only in his early 80s, but he was already at the peak of the sea-splitting realm. With a long lifespan and a high position, how could he not be high-spirited? But could the person lying on the ice bed in the house still be considered human? At first glance, it was clearly a charred corpse. Chapter 33-44. Moreover, the corpse seemed to have been soaked in water, swelling up countless times. Even without getting close, they could smell a nauseating rancid smell. How could this be? Hikaizu murmured, "How did Alliance Master Xiang become like this?" Steward Wu stared blankly at the charred corpse in the ice room, as if recalling something. His body trembled uncontrollably. "We don't know what happened either. Wu Chen still remembered that it happened more than a month ago. Because the day to repair the heavenly halberd was approaching, the Holy Heaven Alliance was on full alert and extremely nervous. Xiang Yunzhou was also full of anxiety. Because the repair of the heavenly halberd was originally the responsibility of the Holy Heaven Alliance's ancestor, Xiang Batian. But since a few years ago, Xiang Batian had left the Holy Heaven Alliance and had yet to return. Although Xiang Yunzhou had forged the heavenly halberd with his grandfather, he had never been in charge of it alone. And no mistakes could be allowed in this matter, otherwise the entire floating island would be buried. At that time, Steward Wu and the others were burning with anxiety. But just a month ago, Xiang Yunzhou's mood suddenly became extremely good after returning from the outside. The anxiety on his face had also turned into a confident and joyful expression. Steward Wu. After that day, Alliance Master went into seclusion. We all thought that Alliance Master had found a way to break through. Who knew that 3 days later, the seclusion chamber would suddenly explode, and Alliance Master, just like that, was completely charred, lying in the rubble, never to wake up again. His gaze turned to Mu Yen and the others, revealing a bitter smile. I won't hide it from you. Previously, it's not that our Holy Heaven Alliance's doctors didn't try to treat Alliance Master. But not only did it not heal, the skin and flesh on his hand were burnt. And this kind of burning was extremely painful, but medicine was ineffective. He could only wait for the pain to pass bit by bit. This kind of torture would last for a full 7 days. Hearing Steward Wu's description, He Kaizu and Beiteng Feilu's expressions changed. Han Song, however, smiled lightly, looking at Alliance Master Xiang's illness. It should be fire poison invading his body. If it was any other illness, I might not be as good as the other doctors. But if it's fire poison, my summoned beast can give it a try. Steward Wu was overjoyed. The Sacred Heaven Alliance disciple who recommended Han Song was even more delighted. I've long heard that Dr. Han's summoned beast is a rare medical support type soul beast, the 100 Snow Sparrow. The 100 Snow Sparrow will definitely be able to restrain all poisons and living things in the world as long as it's fire attributed. With Dr. Han around, our alliance leader will definitely be saved. When Han Song heard this, he raised his chin proudly and muttered something. Soon, a palm-sized snow-white spiritual sparrow appeared in front of everyone. Almost as soon as the spirit sparrow appeared, the surrounding frost seemed to have met its nemesis as it cracked and fell to the ground. Han Song, who had just been unbearably cold, now straightened his back. His expression was calm, and he no longer shivered. He reached out to touch the spirit sparrow and whispered a few words in its ear. Then he pointed at the charred corpse in the ice room. The spirit sparrow flapped its wings and was about to fly into the house. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the side and pressed down on Han Song's arm. This hand was slender and fair, with well-proportioned joints. It was beautiful as if it was carved out of fine jade. Han Song was stunned, then heard a pleasant voice in his ear. Please wait a moment. Chapter 33:45. Dr. Jun, what's the matter? Han Song looked at the girl who stopped him in surprise. Han Song was in a trance for a moment, and amazement flashed in his eyes. Mu Yen said lightly, let's first determine what disease leader Xiang has. Otherwise, your summoned beast may be injured. This was a kind reminder. But in Han Song's ears, it sounded like she was looking down on him. He remembered that under the corrosion of the Een snake goo, his ugly appearance had been seen by the girl in front of him. Han Song's brows furrowed deeply, and his voice became a bit colder. Dr. Jun, this Han is truly grateful for saving my life just now. I'm really not good at detoxifying the Een snake goo. In terms of medical skills, I may not be your opponent. But I have never failed in detoxifying fire poison. The Sacred Heavens Alliance disciple who recommended Han Song glanced at Zhang Heng and couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. Dr. Jun, we know that your medical skills are superb, but there are specializations in this field. On this floating island, if Dr. Han claims to be number 1 in detoxifying fire poison, no one dares to claim to be second. Mu Yen raised her eyebrows, retracted her hand that was pressing down on Han Song, and smiled ambiguously. She had already reminded him. Since the other party didn't appreciate it and insisted on courting death, then forget it. Seeing Mu Yen obediently retreat, Han Song cheered up and used his divine sense to drive away the spirit sparrow. The spirit sparrow flapped its wings and flew towards the charred corpse in the ice room. Steward Wu and the others all held their breath. They watched the spirit sparrow land on top of the charred corpse without blinking. Its sharp beak lightly pecked the head of the charred corpse. A layer of frost instantly spread from the top of the head, gradually covering every inch of the charred corpse's skin. Everyone was overjoyed. It works, Dr. Hans, Snow Sparrow, is really the nemesis of all fire poisons. Han Song also smiled and couldn't help glancing at Mu Yen proudly. However, the next moment, a piercing pain erupted from the depths of his sea of consciousness. Han Song let out a howl that was 100 times more painful than when he was hit by the Een snake goo, and suddenly fell to the ground and kept rolling. Almost at the same time, a golden red flame sprang out of the charred corpse and wrapped around the spirit sparrow. The snow sparrow didn't even make a sound, and disappeared without a trace. There was dead silence. Even Mu Yen couldn't help but be greatly shocked. She could sense that the fire-attributed energy wrapped around the charred corpse was extremely powerful. It was not something that Han Song's, Snow Sparrows, could contend with. But even Mu Yen did not expect it to be so powerful. Han Song's summoned beast, the Snow Sparrow, was not seriously injured, but directly swallowed. In other words, from now on, Han Song was no longer a soul master, and could no longer be a beast soul doctor. Han Song, who slowly woke up from the pain, felt that the connection with the 100 sparrows of ice and snow had been completely broken in his sea of consciousness. His face was deathly pale. At this moment, he remembers Jun Mayan's obstruction, and the remorse in his heart surges like a tide. However, it was too late. It takes Baiting Feilu a long time to react. She staggers back a few steps and fearfully hides behind Mayan. She's actually more than 10 years older than Mayan. But at this moment, she was like a frightened little girl who only wanted to seek the protection of a powerful person. Ikaizu's face was also pale and his lips were trembling. After a while, he muttered, "Steward Wu this. I'm afraid we can't cure Alliance Master Xiang's illness." Chapter 3346. Beitang Feilu nodded repeatedly. How is this a treatment? He was clearly trying to bring a charred corpse back to life, and he even had to pay with his own life. Steward Wu said anxiously, "Dr. He, you're known as the Doctor Genius. How can there be an illness that you can't cure? At least go and take a look at our Alliance Master, right?" Ikaizu let out a long sigh, shook his head and said, "I've already tried to use my divine sense to probe Alliance Leader Xiang's body, but as soon as my divine sense got close, it was swallowed by a scorching heat. If you get close to the treatment, I'm afraid that you won't end up any better than the doctors of the Sacred Heaven Alliance." "Then what about Dr. Jun?" Zhang Heng looks at Mayan hopefully. Dr. Jun is a music doctor. He doesn't need to approach to treat. Baiting Feilu grabbed Mu Yan's hand and said angrily, "Do you think that there is no risk in being a doctor? Yu Yin's treatment relies entirely on her divine sense to touch the patient's body. Didn't you hear what Dr. He said? Divine sense will be devoured just like summoned beasts. Are you trying to kill Mayan?" Mu Yen slightly squints her eyes, looking at the charred corpse in the ice room thoughtfully. The glimmer of hope in Steward Wu and the others' eyes was extinguished bit by bit. At this moment, when Jian chuckled and slowly walked forward, in the end, this old man still has to make a move. Steward Wu's spirit was shaken. He could no longer care about his disgust for Wen Leong. He asked excitedly, "Dr. Wen, do you have a way to cure our alliance leader?" When Jian glances arrogantly and disdainfully at everyone present, especially at Mu Yen, who had just caused him to lose face. "Didn't your Sacred Heaven Alliance want to flatter this little girl and think that my medical skills are only SOSO? Well, now that you've realized that this little girl is useless, you want to turn around and beg this old man?" Steward Wu and the other 5 bowed to him. Some of them even slapped their own faces. They only hoped that Wen Jian would show mercy and save their alliance master's life. When Jian put his hands behind his back and casually spat out a few words, "Ninth Heaven Thunderblade," Steward Wu's face stiffened, and his eyes were filled with struggle. However, when he saw the Alliance Master lying in the ice room like a corpse, he gritted his teeth and said, "Men, go and get the Ninth Heaven Lightning Saber." "Steward Wu, that's the treasure of the Sacred Heaven Alliance. It's just an inanimate object. Could it be more important than the Alliance Master's life? Go get it. I will bear all the consequences." Soon, a small Cosmos box was carried into the cold basement. Even through the storage device, he could feel the powerful pressure and energy of the magic treasure inside. When Jian took the Cosmos box, his eyes full of greed and excitement. Got it. He really got it. The Imperial Tutor was right. This trip to the Sacred Heaven Alliance was a sure win for him. The next step was to complete the task entrusted by the Imperial Tutor, when Jian's eyes darkened as he strode towards the ice room. When Steward Wu saw him like this, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Mu Yen raises her eyebrows and follows them in. "Mu Yen, what are you going to do?" Baiting Fei Lu said anxiously, "That fire poison is so powerful, if you were to touch it." Mu Yen smiled and patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, I just want to see how Dr. Wen is going to save Chief Xiang." When Jian looked at her disdainfully, his eyes surging with a malicious light. However, he did not say anything. Instead, he quickly walked to the ice bed. A small bell cauldron suddenly appeared in his hand. Chapter 3347. When Jian tossed the bell cauldron into the air, a buzzing sound instantly reverberated throughout the underground ice room. The bell cauldron also grew larger, emitting a faint yellow light that enveloped the charred corpse below. "Dr. Jun, you have to be careful." Seeing that Wen Jian's attention was on the bell cauldron, Hikaizu lowered his voice and said, "Wen Jian is a very shrewd and vengeful person. He will not easily let off those who offend him. After leaving the Sacred Heavenly Alliance, you must be careful." Mayan nodded, showing a grateful expression. "Thank you for the reminder, Dr. He." When she lowered her eyes, the corners of her mouth hooked up into a cold arc. It was still unknown who would easily let off who. However, what was this bell cauldron that Wen Jian took out? Why did it also give her a strange feeling? That is also a demon god tool, although it is only a substandard one. Qi Huang's voice rang in her ears. Mayan was startled. Demon god tool? She remembered that the Chaotic Tower and Bixie were both demon god tools. This bell cauldron was also one? "Qi Huang, do you know what kind of fire poison Alliance Master Xiang was afflicted with?" Mayan frowned. "I probed it with my divine sense just now. That fire attribute energy was extremely overbearing. Even my divine sense was almost bitten off by it. What kind of fire poison could be so powerful?" Qi Huang hesitated for a moment, murmuring, "This sage also feels that the energy fluctuation on this person is somewhat familiar, but I can't remember where I came into contact with it." As he spoke, the charred corpse that was originally lying on the sickbed slowly floated into the air, getting closer and closer to the bell cauldron, and the yellow light emitted by the bell cauldron gradually became so dazzling that it was almost impossible to open one's eyes. Wisps of golden-red flames seeped out from the charred corpse. "I know." Qi Huang's voice suddenly sounded, startling Mayan. "What do you know?" Qi Huang snorted. "This exalted one knows what that fire is. No wonder I felt that the smelly burnt smell was somewhat familiar. It turns out to be Golden Crow." "Golden Crow?" Qi Huang lay on the lawn of the space, curling his lips in boredom. "A flame essence that is so lazy that it can fly." Little Phoenix flapped his wings happily and said, "Chio Chio knows about the Golden Crow fire essence. It's very powerful. Only the Golden Crow fire can refine sacred ancestor-level pills and true heaven-bestowing holy artifacts." Mayan's eyes brightened. "Isn't that a good thing?" Qi Huang rolled his eyes. "Don't be silly. The Golden Crow is stupid and lazy, but it's not something that humans can control. That Alliance leader Xiang Yunzhou must have a hole in his brain to want to directly absorb the Golden Crow fire essence. Fortunately, the lazy Golden Crow was sleeping and did not release even 1% of its fire elemental energy." That was why he could still breathe. But it can only last for another 3 days. Mu Yen frowned. Did Jian say that he can save Chief Xiang? Idiot. Dream on. Those that are parasitized by the golden crow are the same as the flame essence's prey. Only if they are alive will they. Qi Huang's voice suddenly paused. He straightened his body and stared at the bell cauldron that was emitting a yellow light. Qi Huang, what's wrong? So that's how it is. After a long while, Qi Huang spat out in a low voice, then revealed an evil smile. That smelly old man really isn't a good person. He doesn't want to save Xiang Yunzhou, but wants to use Xiang Yunzhou as a sacrifice to subdue the golden crow fire essence with this substandard demonic artifact. TSK. This can be a way to temporarily control the flame essence. Chapter 3348. Mayan is startled, then her brows tightly wrinkle. When Jian really had guts. They dared to do such a thing in the territory of the Sacred Heaven Alliance. She sneers, and with a sudden flick of her wrist, the Tian Imo Qin appears in her palm. Qi Huang was stunned. What are you doing? Mu Yen plucked the strings of the zither. Of course it is to wake Xiang Yunzhou and let him refine my natal sword. Didn't you always say that my natal sword wasn't cool enough and that it wasn't as handsome as youngest uncle? If I help Xiang Yunzhou absorb the golden crow fire, what kind of life-bond sword do you think he will forge for me? Qi Huang looked at the high-spirited young girl outside the space. He wanted to say that the power of the golden crow fire essence was great. How could it be so easily tamed? Xiang Yunzhou's meridians had already been corroded by the fire poison and there was no hope for him. But in the end, all his doubts disappeared without a trace when he saw that pair of sparkling peach blossom eyes. Lord Artifact Spirit brushed his red robe and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He said with a disdainful expression, "All right, isn't it just golden crow fire essence? If it dares to cause trouble, I will beat it until it doubts its own life." Guguji! He began to doubt his life. The little chick, who had rolled over to Qi Huang's side, immediately raised its little wings and shouted. Mu Yen closes her eyes. When she opens them again, her fingers are already quickly plucking the strings. The melodious sound of the zither flowed in the quiet basement. Those who were originally focused on the bell cauldron could not help but forget to look over. Dr. Jun, why are you playing music now? Dr. Wen is still treating the Alliance Master. Can you be quiet? Mu Yen turns a deaf ear to everyone's questions, but her hands move faster and faster on the zither. The sound of the zither became more and more urgent, like a torrential downpour, hitting the stone walls. Pa. Gradually, the sound became incoherent, like noise. Just as Steward Wu and the others were about to lose their patience, the bell cauldron suspended in midair suddenly swayed. After that, the yellow light flickered for a while and then disappeared. When Jian's expression changed, what's going on? The spiritual sense connection between him and Zhongding was unexpectedly cut off by something. Clang! An ear-piercing voice suddenly rang out, causing everyone present to tremble. Immediately after, Zhongding flew towards Mu Yen at high speed. Finally, it floated above her head. When Jian's face turned deathly pale, he suddenly turned around and looked at the girl playing the zither. Gnashing his teeth, he said, "Bitch, what did you do?" His connection with Zhongding's divine sense was completely severed. That was a treasure given to him by the imperial tutor. If he lost it, if he messed up this mission, he would suffer a fate worse than death. Mu Yen slowly raises her head. Under the dim light of the basement, she can vaguely see the girl's delicate porcelain skin, bright red and tender lips, thick and long eyelashes, and under the cover of those long eyelashes, her peach blossom eyes are as clear as water and overflowing with brilliant colors. Sorry, I am very interested in this magic treasure of yours. I would like to borrow it to study it. She was right. This bell cauldron was not something that could be heard or spoken. Therefore, Mayan easily cut off the connection between him and Zhongding. When Jian's face was twisted and his eyes were filled with a crazy killing intent, he couldn't help but let out a furious roar. He condensed all the spiritual energy in his body and fiercely slapped Mu Yen. Wen Jian was an expert of the opening mountain realm. How could a little girl in the mortal cultivation realm like Mu Yen block this palm? Beitang Feilu's complexion changed greatly, and he growled, "Mu Yen, be careful." Chapter 3349. He Kaizu also took out his defensive artifact to save her, but he was still a step too late. Seeing Wenjian's murderous intent, Mayan sat motionless in the same place, the corners of her lips slightly hooked, her posture lazy. The next moment, there was a loud bang. Wenjian's whole body flew out, heavily hitting the ice wall. The ice wall shattered, and countless gravel and ice pieces smashed onto Wenjian's body. On the other side, a tall and handsome man appeared out of nowhere in front of Mayan. Beitang Feilu sucked in a cold breath. Heavens! There's actually such a handsome man in this world. Steward Wu turned pale with fright. You? Who are you? How did you enter the forbidden area of my Sacred Heaven Alliance? Zhang Heng was the only one present who recognized him at a glance. Wasn't this man emitting a terrible pressure Mayan's fiancé? But he clearly didn't come to the Sacred Heaven Alliance, so how could he appear here? Di Mingju, who appeared out of nowhere, was holding a jade slip in his hand, which was flickering with a faint light. Elder Chang's nervous voice came from inside. Jun Shang, what happened? Nothing. Wait a moment. After coldly replying, Di Mingju turned around and pulled Mayan up. He examined her from head to toe and sighed in relief. Feeling the cold environment, he couldn't help but frown. He took off his clothes and tightly wrapped the woman in his arms. His gaze swept over Wenjian, who was struggling to get up from the ruins, and he lightly said, "Do you want Ben Jun to kill these jumping clowns for you?" Mayan smiled, her eyes curved. "No need, I can take care of it myself. Did I disturb your business?" Di Mingju coldly looked at the jade slip in his hand, and said without hesitation, "It's just a trivial matter." Far away in the Xiaoxin continent, the people of the polar domain gathered in the high sky hall, waiting for the emperor's next instruction. How was the unusual movement of the nether realm and the demon army a trivial matter? Ben Jun will accompany you, no need. Mayan pushed him, you continue with your business, I'll save my people. If there's danger, it won't be too late for you to save the beauty. Di Mingju purses his lips in displeasure. He was the extreme domain's sovereign emperor. Was he someone who could come and go at the beck and call? At the very least, he should collect some interest. Just as he was thinking this, a gentle kiss fell on his cheek. The girl's gentle and sweet voice sounded in his ears, "Thank you for saving my life, but I have no way to repay you. I can only repay you with my body in the future." The emperor's ears turned slightly red. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly before he suppressed it again. Finally, with a light snort, he disappeared on the spot. All of this happened in just a few moments. The crowd didn't even have time to react before the handsome man who suddenly appeared disappeared. Wenjian staggered and stabilized his body, but spat out another mouthful of blood. His face was even paler than Han Song's, who had lost his summoned beast. He glares at Mu Yen. "You, what did you just do?" Mu Yen revealed an innocent smile. "It's nothing. It's just that my fiancé couldn't bear to see a slut bully me, so he came out to fight for me." How is that nothing? This person casually broke into the forbidden area of the Sacred Heavens Alliance. Wen Jian, a cultivator at the peak of the mountain opening realm, didn't even have the strength to fight back under his casual palm. Chapter 3350. He came as he pleased, attacked as he pleased, and disappeared as he pleased. To this man, everyone present was like an ant that he couldn't even be bothered to look at. How is it nothing? At this time, Wen Jian really wants to slap Mayan to death. However, the qi and blood in his body surged and his spiritual power collapsed. He was actually heavily injured by that man's casual palm strike. If not for the armor given to him by the Imperial Preceptor, he probably wouldn't even be able to stand up. Wen Jian forcefully took out a pill and swallowed it before gritting his teeth and saying, "Fine, I won't argue with you about this." Mu Yen unhurriedly says, "It's fine if Dr. Wen wants to haggle over it. At worst, I'll just call my fiancé over again." I'm a very timid person. When Dr. Wen scared me, I was so scared that I wanted to find someone to rely on and protect me. Everyone, I really don't see how you're a coward. Wen Jian was so angry that the top of his head seemed to be emitting smoke, and his whole body was trembling because of his anger. But in the end, he still endured. That underworld sky cauldron is the treasure of my Wen family. Please return it to me, Dr. Jun. Mu Yen hooks up her lips. Just because you say it's yours? Why don't you call it and see if it will respond? You. Jun Mayan, don't go too far. Even Steward Wu and the others who were watching from the side felt that Mayan had gone too far this time. Most importantly, their alliance master was still in the cauldron and had yet to be treated. When Jian glanced at Steward Wu and sneered, I was just curing alliance leader Xiang's fire poison and was interrupted at the crucial moment. Now that the fire poison has probably invaded alliance leader Xiang's heart meridian, if there is any delay, alliance leader Xiang's life will be hard to save. I'll leave it here. Think about what your Sacred Heaven Alliance plans to do. Upon hearing this, Steward Wu and the rest's expressions changed. His gaze towards Mayan is also extremely unkind. Dr. Jun, please don't make trouble. Our alliance leader's life is at stake. Please return the dark sky cauldron to Dr. Wen immediately. Mayan sneered, revealing a mocking expression. If you give the dark sky cauldron to Wen Jin, that would be the real trouble. What do you mean? Jun Mayan, don't be too arrogant. Even if your fiancé has extraordinary abilities, our Sacred Heaven Alliance is not to be trifled with. If our alliance leader dies because of you, we'll make you pay with your life. Mu Yan's cold gaze swept across everyone in the Sacred Heaven Alliance, and she said unhurriedly, a bunch of idiots. Can't you see that Wen Jian is not trying to save alliance leader Xiang, but wants to use alliance leader Xiang as a sacrifice to absorb the golden crow fire essence, using the underworld sky cauldron? What? Using the alliance master as a sacrifice. What is golden crow fire essence? The people of the Sacred Heaven Alliance were confused. However, Wen Jian's face changed greatly as he looked at Mu Yen with a face full of fear. How did this little girl know about golden crow fire essence? How did she know his motive? Mu Yen looked at Wen Jian with a smile. What? Curious how I know all this? That's because I can predict. Wen Jian's face twisted, and he scolded loudly, Bitch, don't make irresponsible accusations and slander me. Not only do I know your motive, I also know that this underworld sky cauldron does not belong to you. Mu Yen turned a deaf ear to his cursing and continued to speak unhurriedly. As everyone knows, as long as it's a high-level treasure, as long as it's refined by a cultivator, there will be a certain soul contract between the magic tool and its master. Chapter 3351. As long as the contract seal is not erased, others will not be able to use it. The Sacred Heaven Alliance specializes in the refinement of artifacts. You must be very clear about this, right? Steward Wu hesitantly looked at Mu Yen, then looked at Wen Jin, and nodded. Indeed. Come, Dr. Wen, didn't you say that the underworld sky cauldron is the heirloom of your Wen family? Then try to make your contract light up now. As long as you can prove that the Nethersky cauldron is indeed your contracted treasure, I'll return it to you immediately. How about it? Everyone's gaze fell on Wen Jin. Then he saw his ashen face. For a moment, everyone reacted. What Jun Mayan said was actually true. The Netherworld sky cauldron was indeed not something that could be heard and spoken of. Then why did he lie? Wen Jin gritted his teeth and said, Fine, so what if I admit that I borrowed this thing? Is that a reason for you to snatch it? That's weird. Mayan chuckles and interrupts him. Alliance head Xiang has been poisoned by the golden crow fire poison. No one in the world should know, right? Even the people of Holy Heaven Alliance could not tell that what was on Alliance Chief Xiang's body was the essence of golden crow fire. Just now, Dr. Han had lost his summoned beast because of his carelessness. But how did you know, Dr. Wen? Not only does he know, he even specially borrowed the underworld sky cauldron that can counter the golden crow fire. Does Dr. Wen have the ability to predict the future? Following Mayan's narration, Wenjian's complexion has turned from purple to pale. The gazes of Steward Wu and the others gradually sharpened. Just now, they were worried about the Alliance Master's safety, so they didn't think it through. Now that it was brought up by Mayan, he felt that this Wenjian was full of flaws. Wenjian had been exceptionally arrogant ever since he entered the Sacred Heaven Alliance. He even used the Yin Snake Gu to hurt He Kaizu and the others. He even demanded to take away the Sacred Heaven Alliance's treasure, the Ninth Heaven Thunder Saber. He did not seem to be afraid that if he failed to cure Xiang Yunzhou, he would end up offending the Sacred Heaven Alliance and not be able to leave alive. Because from the beginning, Wenjian knew what illness Xiang Yunzhou had. Mu Yan's fingertips lightly press on the zither strings, casually plucking as she continues. Perhaps, from the very beginning, he never intended to let us walk out alive. Most likely, when the Netherworld Sky Cauldron absorbed the essence of the Golden Crow, Alliance leader Xiang alone would not be enough. In his eyes, all of us are sacrificial offerings. Wenjian could not hold it in any longer and roared, "Shut up! Bitch, you're framing me. I'm the dignified #1 divine physician of the Lan family empire, the imperial court physician. How could I possibly do such a thing? How dare you accuse me without any evidence? I don't have any evidence." Mu Yan reveals a bright and beautiful smile. "However, I'm very good at extorting confessions through torture. Since the truth came out from your mouth, it should be able to be used as evidence, right?" Before Wenjin and Steward Wu could react, the unhurried sound of a zither rang out in the cold basement. The sound of the zither was melodious, lingering, and intoxicating to the ears of others. But in Wenjian's ears, it was like hypnosis, causing his mind to slowly fall into a trance. Everything in front of him became more and more blurry. Finally, there is a bang. Wenjian's already exhausted body fell to the ground, falling into a deep sleep. Floating like a dream activates. Chapter 3352. It's really thanks to Di Mingju seriously injuring Wenjian, otherwise, with Mayan's current cultivation. It's really not easy to drag a cultivator at the peak of the opening mountain realm into a dream. Mayan lightly purses her lips, hooking up into a beautiful arc. The speed at which her fingers pluck the strings is getting faster and faster. On the ground, Wenjian's brows wrinkle tighter and tighter, the expression on his face becoming more and more frightened and desperate. His body unconsciously curls up, twitching and spasming. His thick hair starts to fall down in handfuls. His facial skin, which originally only had fine wrinkles, quickly shrinks and wrinkles. After the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, Wenjian seems to have aged more than 10 years. Only then did Mu Yan lightly pluck the strings with her fingertips, producing a resounding sound. The sleeping Wenjian trembles, slowly opening his eyes. Dream? It's a dream. Everything just now was just a dream. Great. He cries and screams like he's crazy, his voice hoarse and crazy. However, when he raises his head, he meets the girl's peach blossom eyes that seem to be smiling yet not smiling. His whole body is a guardian spirit, and his eyes reveal the fear of seeing a malicious spirit. "You? What did you do to me?" Thousands of years of life pass by in a flash. I gave you a chance to experience a different life in a dream. It's the same as letting you live a few more lifetimes, isn't that good? No. I don't want to experience it. Wenjian screams hysterically, wanting to rush over and smash the zither in Mayan's hands. But he's just been seriously injured, and now he's suffering in floating like a dream. After running a few steps, he staggers and falls to the ground. The surrounding cold air penetrates his body, making his teeth chatter incessantly, and he can't even say a word. Mayan looks at his sorry figure, but her eyes are colder than the temperature in the ice room. Wenjian, what you just experienced was the final outcome of those patients who were harmed by you. What? When you framed them and schemed to seize their family property and treasures, why didn't you ask them if they wanted to experience that kind of life? Wenjian trembles and tries to get up from the ground, but because his hands and feet are weak, he falls heavily on the ice several times. His head is bleeding for a while. He could only lie there in a sorry state, then look at Mu Yen with fear and resentment. You? Who exactly are you? Do you know that I'm the imperial physician of the Lan family empire? If you kill me, the Lan family empire will definitely not let you off. Mu Yen narrowed her eyes slightly. In that case, your actions in the Holy Heaven Alliance this time are related to the Lan family empire? Steward Wu's pupils shrank as he glared at Wenjin. Wenjin said with a trembling voice, I don't understand what you're saying. The Sacred Heaven Alliance sent out hero invitations to invite doctors. That's why I came over. I didn't expect them to take revenge. Then let's change the question. Mu Yen interrupted him. Do you really want to use the Dark Sky Cauldron to save Alliance Master Xiang? Seeing that when Ji Yen is about to open his mouth, Mu Yen sneers and presses her fingers on the strings. Wen Jian, you better think carefully before you answer. If you tell a lie, I'll let you stay in this nightmare for another 100 years. Wen Jian's face paled as he recalled the days and nights he had experienced in the nightmare. Looking at his wrinkled hands, his body began to tremble. Mu Yen presses her fingers on the strings and slowly plucks them. The pleasant music in the ears of others is like a talisman to hasten Wen Jian's death. He finally breaks down and yells, No. Don't let me enter the nightmare again. I'll tell you everything. Chapter 3353. The Dark Sky Cauldron is used to absorb the Golden Crow Fire Essence. Mu Yen, and after that? What will happen to Alliance Master Xiang? Wenjin glanced at the ashen-faced Steward Wu, gritting his teeth. His soul will scatter. Scoundrel! How dare you? How vicious of you! We invited you to treat the Alliance Master, but you want to kill him. Steward Wu took a step forward and stomped on Wenjin's back, gritting his teeth. Speak, who sent you to harm the Alliance Master? And that Golden Crow, was it a trap you guys set for the Alliance Master? Wenjin screamed from the stomp, I can save Xiang Yunzhou, I really can save Xiang Yunzhou. In this world, only I can cure the Golden Crow fire poison. If you kill me, Xiang Yunzhou will definitely die. Do you think we will still believe you? Speak, who instigated you to go against the Sacred Heavens Alliance? Cold sweat dripped down Wenjian's forehead. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. His face was full of pain, but his mouth was tightly shut. As if telling the truth would be more terrifying than death. Mu Yen narrowed her eyes, playing faster and faster. It doesn't matter if you don't speak. Then let the nightmares continue. When the time comes, I will always be able to see what I want to see. After, floating like a dream, rose to 3 stars, she could obtain the memories of the dreamer in the dream. Of course, not all memories could be obtained. The more the secret the owner did not want others to know, the more tightly the related memories would be sealed and protected. Only when the soul slowly shattered and could no longer control one's consciousness, could the buried memories be dug out. This was like the soul-searching art. The more memories were taken, the more damage it would cause. In serious cases, one would become an idiot, or even have their soul scattered. When Jian's face was ashen. Thinking of what Mu Yen had said, everything he had experienced was the miserable ending of the patients he had harmed. He couldn't help but believe that Mu Yen was telling the truth. I'll speak. I'll say anything. When Jian broke down and cried, crawling over to stop Mu Yen from playing, Please, don't let me enter the dream again. Mu Yen stops playing and looks at him. When Jian gritted his teeth and said with a trembling voice, It's the country. His second syllable hasn't even left his mouth when the cauldron bell above Mayan suddenly emits an ear-piercing hum. Following that, a dazzling red light shot out from the bell and landed on Wenjian's body. A ball of flame sprang up from Wenjian's back. In the blink of an eye, he was burned to ashes along with his bones, flesh and soul. Mu Yen suddenly looked up, and the 7 absolute swords whistled out, chopping toward the bell in the sky. With a loud bang, the entire ice room shook and shattered ice flew everywhere. A charred corpse fell from the bell cauldron. Before anyone could react, the netherworld sky cauldron flew out of the passageway with a whoosh and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Everyone's face turned ashen. Steward Wu's eyes were filled with hatred. Who is it? Who is so vicious and arrogant? They were simply looking down on the Sacred Heaven Alliance. Mu Yen exhaled and looked at them with a complicated expression. Inwardly, she thought, as one of the three major alliances, you guys are indeed a bit too useless. Any random doctor could bully him, so it was no wonder that he was so easily schemed against. Chapter 3354. Meeting Mayan's gaze, Steward Wu instantly understood. For a moment, he was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. He gritted his teeth and looked at Heng. Activate the Moonlight Illusionary Formation immediately. No matter what, you have to contact the old ancestor and have him return as soon as possible. Heng hesitated, but didn't the Alliance Master say that the old ancestor could finally put down his burden and go out to play, and that we should not disturb him no matter what? The Alliance Master is kind and filial, but are you stupid as well? Steward Wu shouted angrily, others are already bullying us. If the old ancestor finds out, will he still be able to play? Go now. If there are any consequences, I will bear them all. Heng hurriedly accepted the order and left. Steward Wu, however, looked at Mayan and bowed deeply to her. Our Sacred Heaven Alliance will never forget Dr. Jun's life-saving grace. Mayan said lightly, he hasn't been saved yet. Isn't it too early to thank him? Steward Wu's eyes brightened, his voice trembling with excitement. Dr. Jun, are you saying that our Alliance Master can still be saved? If he is saved, is the promise that your Alliance Master will personally refine an artifact for me still valid? Yes. Of course. When has the Holy Heaven Alliance not fulfilled its promise? But the artifact that I want to refine is not just one, but a set. Wouldn't it be too tiring for Alliance Master Xiang? Steward Wu agreed on behalf of the Alliance Master without hesitation. No problem. Dr. Jun, as long as you can save the Alliance Master, you will be our Holy Heaven Alliance's benefactor. We will definitely fulfill your request even if we have to go through hell. Not to mention that it is our duty to let the Alliance Master refine an artifact. A bright smile appeared on Mayan's face. Since Steward Wu is so understanding, then I, Jun Mayan, will guarantee Alliance Master Xiang's life. Hey, Jun Mayan, how do you plan to save this charred corpse? It was silent in the cold ice room. Because Steward Wu, Hikaizu, and the others had already been chased out by Mayan. Her reason was very simple. It would be very risky to expel the Golden Crow Fire Essence from Xiang Yunzhou's body. Once the Golden Crow Fire Essence was awakened, the energy would explode. Everyone present would be swallowed by the flames and die without a burial. The Golden Crow Fire Essence would only calm down after swallowing enough souls. This was also the method that Wen Jian had initially planned to use them as sacrifices. It would be best if the Golden Crow Fire Essence did not awaken. Once it awakened, Wen Jian could hide within the underworld sky cauldron, but the other people present would definitely be burnt until not even their bones remained. Upon hearing Mu Yan's words, not only did Steward Wu not have the slightest doubt, he even shed tears of gratitude. He only feels that Dr. Mayan has a benevolent heart. In order to save their Union Master's life, she doesn't even care about her own safety. Of course, Qi Huang isn't worried about Mayan's safety. If an insignificant lazy flame spirit were to injure Mayan in front of him, then he, Qi Huang, wouldn't be able to mingle anymore. However, he really couldn't think of a way to save Xiang Yunzhou. Mayan reveals a mysterious smile, her fingers slowly strumming the Tian Mo Qin. This is the inspiration that the dark sky cauldron gave me. A bad premonition suddenly surged in Qi Huang's heart. An hour later, his premonition came true. Jun Mayan, you really are a madwoman. Qi Huang muttered, looking at the pale face outside the space, but the confident and disdainful smile on her face, her eyes shining with determination, the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled up. A gentle smile that even he himself didn't realize appeared on his face. Chapter 3355. At this time, the ice that had covered the cold basement had completely melted. Half a person's height of water had accumulated on the ground. Floating in the air, Xiang Yunzhou, who had been silent and motionless like a corpse, was twitching uncontrollably. Groans of pain occasionally escaped from his chest. Above Xiang Yunzhou, a golden red ball of fire was jumping like the sun, emitting a scorching heat that could melt everything around it. Hundreds of strands of silver energy were entwined around the fireball. The other end of the energy strands was connected to the Tian Mo Qin. Mu Yan's gaze fell on the golden crow fire essence that was jumping in the air, as if it was desperately struggling. The corners of her mouth curled up, revealing a sinister smile. The fact that you could be subdued by the nether sky cauldron means that you know how to compromise. My Tian Mo Qin is 1,000 times more powerful than that substandard demonic artifact, the nether sky cauldron. If you continue to make trouble, then at worst we'll both die together. Hearing Mu Yan's words, the golden crow fire in the air started to shake violently. The scorching flames didn't just shoot out, but as soon as they landed on the wall, there would be a sizzling sound. Even the hard and cold blue stone was instantly vaporized. The golden crow was really angry. Normally, what humans were most afraid of was that it would completely awaken. Even if they wanted to subdue it, they had to lower their stance and offer it all kinds of tributes. Those tributes were the most delicious and tender human souls. So it reluctantly went to the talisman that they provided and stayed for a while. In any case, it could still eat and sleep well inside. When it needed something, it could just sneeze. But what about this damned woman in front of it? Using the body of impurities to produce the purest spirit fire, luring it out of its already decaying body. The golden crow had thought that she would use her own spirit fire to worship it and curry its favor. But who knew that as soon as it came out of Xiang Yunzhou's body, it would be bound by countless strands of energy, unable to break free. This human didn't intend to beg it at all, but wanted it to obediently submit. Bastard! Bastard! When had it, the golden crow, suffered such humiliation? Lowly humans deserve to die. The golden crow's violent struggle caused the temperature of the basement to rise again. Not to mention the layer of ice, even the surrounding rocks and bricks began to melt rapidly. Only when the sparks hit Mu Yan will they be blocked by an invisible energy shield. The energy threads that were wrapped around the golden fireball broke one by one, and then wrapped around it again with the sound of the zither, repeating the cycle. Mu Yan's body has long been completely drenched in sweat, her lips a captivating red. But his face was deathly pale. On one hand, he had to restrain the golden crow, and on the other, he had to use divine hands with to block the golden crow. One could imagine how much spiritual power she had consumed. "Mother, let me help you." A clear voice of a child rang out. Xiaobao had appeared beside Mu Yan at some point in time. The Bixia sword in his hand emitted a buzzing sound as he slashed at the golden crow in the sky. The fat rabbit also appeared at the same time. It opened its mouth wide and swallowed all the sparks flying over into its stomach. The sparks that could even melt rocks and iron. But when it reached the fat rabbit's mouth, there was no reaction at all. Mu Yan turns her head to look at the little person standing beside her, revealing a shallow and gentle smile. "Okay, thank you Xiaobao for your help. It's been a long time since we fought side by side." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.